What we live for.
Simply put, conserving wildlife literally means the wise use of wildlife. And that's at the root of everything we do. Oklahoma is one of the most species-diverse states in the nation. Making sure opportunities exist for hunters, anglers, and all those who appreciate wildlife is not only our job.
It's our passion.
We are your Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. From sunup to sundown, and sometimes all night long, the employees of our agency are relentless in their dedication to a job well done. The science behind wildlife conservation is constantly evolving, and our biologists are leading the way with groundbreaking and cutting-edge techniques that the entire scientific community benefits from. If that's not enough to make you proud, then consider this. We've been doing all this since our agency's birth in 1909, without using a dime of taxpayer money. That's because the Wildlife Department is designed as a user-pay, user-benefit agency. It's sportsmen and wildlife enthusiasts who pay the bill for wildlife conservation in Oklahoma. Revenue from the sale of hunting and fishing licenses make up the majority of the agency's budget. There's also another unique way that outdoorsmen contribute financially. Each time someone buys a gun, ammunition, fishing equipment, or fuel for their boat, a small portion of the tax they pay at the register is used for wildlife conservation. But hunters and anglers don't just contribute financially. A long time ago, we recognized that sportsmen are our most effective management tool. Shaping regulations and making sure everyone complies to them has played a major role in bringing many species back from the brink of extinction to unimaginable numbers. As much as the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation has accomplished, we are positive our agency's best days are yet to come. You can see it on our faces. You can feel it with your hands. And you can hear it on the landscape. You'll find us working hard to make your state's natural resources the most healthy in the land.
We are.
We are.
We are.
We are your Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. Fishing, hunting, wildlife management, resource protection, habitat conservation, public outreach, and education.
It's what we do. It's what we live for.
Simply put, conserving wildlife literally means the wise use of wildlife. And that's at the root of everything we do.
Good morning. Welcome, and thank you for being here at the August regular business meeting of the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation meeting. We're glad you're here, and we will start with roll call from Rhonda.
Commissioner Mabry. Here. Commissioner Deal. Here. Commissioner Barwick. Here. Commissioner Holder. Here. Commissioner Zelps. Here. Commissioner Dillingham. Here. Commissioner Kane. Good morning. Commissioner Gaddis.
Here. Got a full house. This is awesome. I guess when we skip a month, it gets backed up a little bit. All right. So, we would, if you would stand, we have Wade Farrar leading us in invocation as well as Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for safe travels here today, and we pray for the same blessing on our return home. We just thank you for all these award recipients that are standing here with us today and their sacrifice to make that happen, God. We thank you for the opportunity that you've given us to be the stewards of the wildlife resource and just to watch over them and protect them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we have some guests for introduction?
I think we have a few here today. So we've got McKenna Penham with the Governor's Office, Deborah Torres with the Governor's Office, Rick Grunman with the Foundation, which we'll hear from shortly, Stephen Ruiz from J.D. Adams and Company, Barry Schrader with Blue River Fly Fishers, Scott Dittner with Blue River Fly Fishers, Bill Payer with Blue River Fly Fishers, Reagan Siegfried on the agenda representing Shikar, but also on the foundation board. Of course, Laura McIver's here with Quail Forever, regular attendee. Jessica Elliott with the Susan Bergen Ranch here this morning. So thank you all for being here.
Yes, welcome. All right, we have some awards to present.
Yes, we
By
do.
JD.
We have, is that on? There it is. We have a couple of employee recognition awards, tenure-wise, and then there's several others on the agenda today, as you'll see. This is kind of the meeting for us to recognize a lot of the stellar employees that we have throughout the agency. Real quickly, before I dive into that, I do want to, I know most of you are aware, but just a reminder that at last month's Western Associations of Fish and Wildlife Agencies summer meeting, our commission was awarded the Commission Board of the Year Award. So there is your plaque. Thing just about like popped off on me here. I don't know. We're gonna have to do some work on it to make sure.
Kind of like the hockey trophy, can it just pass around all the members?
Yes, right? Yeah. I don't think you're going to be able to drink anything out of it, though. But yeah. Yeah. So first, this morning, we want to recognize for his 20 years of service, Philip Cottrell Jr. He's the Major County Game Warden, hired in July of 2003 as a wildlife technician at Lexington WMA. Promoted to game warden in Jeff County in July of 2005, transferred to Garfield County as he was working his way closer to home in January of 2013, and then transferred to Major County in 2016, worked as an intern for Fish Division the year before in the summer of 2002 before he started with us. Also served as a member of the Honor Guard, and I will mention that he also has a son in high school, I believe, right, that has written he's a stellar writer. He's the one that was awarded one of Shikar's, you'll hear from Shikar later, but one of their essay awards that is given out every year too, so I'm sure he's very proud of that and his kids. But thank you for all you do, Philip, for the department for your 20 years of service. No thanks.
Thank you, Philip. Congratulations.
And he's a man of few words. Also celebrating 20 years to the department is Marnie Loftus, our operations manager. Captain Loftus began in August of 2003 in game warden in Washington County, I think, at the time of hire. Transferred to Murray County in 07, Craig County in 08, Delaware County in 2012, and then was promoted to captain over operations in 2019. Had to make the sacrifice to move into Oklahoma City, right? So during her time at headquarters, Marnie has been of incalculable worth to both ODWC and the Law Enforcement Division. She has accomplished more in her current position in these 4 short years than many before her did in their entire career in that position. I can attest to some of that. Marnie has been instrumental in getting new hires trained, ensuring they're the best prepared game wardens that we've ever put out in the field. She saw an obvious lack in our initial training and took the initiative to push for the Oklahoma Game Warden Academy. She built the academy from scratch, block by block, until she developed the Game Warden Academy that contends with the best in the country. Even our rivals to the south of the Red River are jealous of the content and specificity of our academy. We now have had 3 classes of graduates from academy, and it continues to improve with each class. Another shortcoming we had was in our field training officers program. The FTO program had not been updated in decades and was lacking in many ways. Marnie sought out a program that was widely accepted nationwide as one of the best out there. After seeking permission to use this program, she completely revamped it with our game wardens in mind. Her outstanding computer skills allowed her to build fillable electronic forms for all aspects of the program, bringing us up to speed with top law enforcement agencies across the country. We thank Captain Loftus for her 20 years of service and dedication to constant improvement in what it means to be a game warden, and thank you for making sure that our folks go out there ready to face whatever is going to hit them as soon as they get out in the field. It's definitely being able to go and experience some of the academy. It's definitely taken them to a whole nother level, so thank you, Marnie. Okay.
Congratulations and thank you, Marnie. Thank you.
Following in the footsteps of Philip. All right.
All right.
I think that's it. Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda, we have Nathan Erdman with Law Enforcement Chief.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to come up here and address the commission. It's my favorite meeting of the year. We get to brag on our Game Warden of the Year. First, I kind of want to go through the other nominations, because the way the process works is we get nominations from each of the districts, which are 8 in the state, and they write them up and they send them up here to the office, and then we get a group of previous winners and a retiree to come in and read the nominations, and they select a winner. So that it's really me and Wade have no say-so in who wins. And this year I'd like to go through and mention each district's nomination. District 8 was Stephen Paul. He was the runner-up this year and as well as last year, so he's been kind of the bridesmaid and never the bride for 2 years in a row so far. District 7 was Orlando Martinez. He's an outstanding warden, been working for us for 5 or 6 years now. District 6 is Michael Zimmerman. We grabbed Michael Zimmerman from Kansas and put him to work in Oklahoma, and he's been an awesome warden ever since. District 5 was Dylan King. He has since transferred to District 6, so they got a heck of a warden out there in District 6 now from District 5. District 4 was Trey Hale. He's down in Marshall and County, works a ton of hours on the boat on Texoma and doing everything else down there in that populated area. District 3 is Jim Gillum. We got him from the state parks, and he's been an outstanding warden. He's down in Atoka County. He's been a great warden for us ever since. District 2 was Cody Youngblood. Cody's up in northeast Oklahoma. He was instrumental on us with the GRDA and the rafting areas last year. And then this year's winner from District 1 is Riley Willman. Riley, you want to come on up? Riley's been working for us for a little over 4 years, and he is, I've gotten to attend him with him to the state capitol on a real special occasion when he was recognized for saving a person's life up here, risking his own life to save theirs and performing CPR on them, bringing them back to life twice. And then he also leads his district, which is District 1 and, you know, Grand Lake, all the other lakes up there around Tulsa and farther northeast with the most contacts and sportsman's checks. So he's not only out there saving people's lives, but he's also out there doing the work and passing on the message of conservation. So right now I'll introduce Reagan Siegfried from Car Safari, also the president of the foundation.
I need a step ladder. We need one of those. I'm too short for this. Thank you very much. For those that aren't familiar with Car Safari Club International, it's a group of about 200 hunters and conservationists from around the world. It was started in the early 50s, and it was started by a couple guys. At that point, actually there was one lady in it, and they were traveling around the world and they were opening up hunting areas all around the world. So they were going to India, they were going to Pakistan, and the only time they ever saw each other was when they were in camp or when they were in the airport. And they said, we need to go and get together to understand how everybody's doing, what they're doing, and where they're going. And 73 plus years on, we still do that. We only have one annual meeting. There's less than 200 full members that are in it. And so it's almost like a secret society of hunters. Most of you guys in the room, you know a few of us. So the late Bill Brewster's a member. Susie Brewster's on track to be president here in a few years. Myself, my father, and Jim Johnson are the only Oklahomans that I know of right now. Aside from just hunting, the other side is we're very big in conservation efforts, not only domestically but internationally. So we've funded just recently rhino dehorning projects throughout Africa. We've worked on the reintroduction of the markhor sheep. We've funded some lion projects in Africa. So we're spending millions of dollars every year going in and investing in projects around the world. What we like about it in Oklahoma from the foundation side, they've committed to $100,000 to Hackberry Flats. So that's a big win for us in our state. We also do a scholarship program. So if anybody knows people that are, preferably we like that are children of game wardens, that want to get into wildlife conservation or in the game warden track, please let me know. I just actually got all the applications, and we'd love to go and get some of those from Oklahoma. If you know professors that we need to go, we can do that. And finally, we do the Wildlife Officer of the Year, and this is probably the funnest part of it. So we do it in all 50 states as well as the provinces in Canada. The process goes in of however the state goes in and do it, and then we provide a lapel pin, a plate, a plaque, and if unfortunately the officer is killed in the line of duty, there's also a mechanism to go and get the family some money if they die on the job. We hope that never happens, but we're very happy for you, Riley. This is a great honor. There's some unbelievable people that we've been able to meet throughout over the years, and we're happy that you're joining a unique club. Thank you.
Don, are we taking pictures?
We'll do it after because our mission goes over here.
Thank you. We'll have this up here. Appreciate it. His wife, Kensington, very good for
Oh, yeah.
Let's get a picture right here.
I have the picture with them.
Yeah, going to, you just
Okay.
wanted to get
Oh, I
Jim
see.
in.
Gotcha.
Of course, you're in it.
I need a step ladder for this too.
Couple
A little bit tighter, thank you. I'll take 2 of these in case someone blinks, okay? All right, hold that plate down toward the floor. There you go. 1, 2, 3. A little bit more. There you go. That's perfect. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Congratulations, Riley. That's awesome. Okay. All right, Bill Dinkins, next on the agenda.
Thank you, Chairwoman Gaddis. Good morning, Commissioners. You know, as Nathan said, it's one of the funner commission meetings because we get to recognize a lot of our staff, but we also get to recognize our Landowner of the Year. So we started in the roughly 1980s recognizing a Landowner of the Year for doing outstanding work on their private property for wildlife conservation. I don't think it'd be a shock to anybody in this room, but it's mission critical that our landowners are engaged with wildlife conservation, with 97% of the state in private ownership. Josh Richardson's going to come on up. We really didn't rehearse this, but I know we had 7 nominations this year, and we asked for nominations from anybody in the agency, and we had 7 this year, which is outstanding. But I will steal a little bit of thunder that when they were independently ranked by our regional supervisors, I believe we had a unanimous #1 this year with Susan and Floyd Bergen. So I'll turn it over to Josh. He'll talk a little bit more about the program, and then we're going to ask Senior Biologist Mark Howard to come up and actually give the presentation.
Thank you, and good morning. Again, as Bill started out explaining there, our Landowner Conservationist of the Year Award is an award that promotes wildlife management and enhancement on privately owned lands and promotes the continuation of good wildlife practices and encouragement of other landowners to begin wildlife conservation on their lands. I have the great privilege here at the department to supervise a team of biologists that are spread across the state, and we work with landowners, specifically the private lands program. We'll touch anywhere from 150 to 200,000 to 250,000 acres in a year. That sounds like a whole bunch out there. You look at the total landscape of Oklahoma, and it's a really, really small fraction of what's out there. So like Bill said, when we open this up for nominations, we do send these out across the department, ask people if they know somebody that has had a significant impact out there to please bring it forward to our attention. You know, again, we touch a lot out there, but it's nowhere near the entirety of the state. So last year, it was a great privilege to bring forward a nomination from one of our wildlife technicians in the northeast part of the state that had nominated someone. This year we've got a joint nomination. Mark Howard will be doing the presentation, but Zach Polk actually was the one that started out bringing forward this name. So Zach and Mark put the nomination together, and I'll turn it over to Mark to explain to you why we chose Susan and Floyd and their properties as our 2023 Landowner Conservationist of the Year. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Josh. And thank you. And I will be doing this presentation on behalf of both Zach Polk and myself. We both jointly nominated Susan Bergen, our Landowner of the Year. So if you will without further ado, Susan and her husband Floyd are our Landowners of the Year. They are the owners of Bergen Ranch, also known as Peachcrest Ranch. The main ranch consists of 11,540 acres of tall grass and mixed grass prairie in the Arbuckle Plains region, right along the Johnson-Pontotoc County line. Most of it is in Johnston County, just due east of Sulphur. There's an additional 2 units, one near Norman and one near Goldsby, comprising 1,400 acres that is used as supplemental forage production and also as temporary pasture during periods of drought, such as what they're experiencing now. Here's kind of a rough idea of where the main ranch is located. there east of Sulphur, with those two dots south of Oklahoma City, representing the Goldsby and Norman properties. The Bergen Ranch is a working cattle ranch. Roughly, it fluctuates, but roughly 1,200 cattle on about 12,777 acres. Since 2012, the Bergens have focused their efforts on improving soil health, prairie plant diversity, and wildlife populations across all of their properties. The cattle grazing is carefully managed, and the cattle are rotated to new units every 3 to 7 days, depending upon rainfall and forage conditions, in a process that's known as regenerative grazing. Each unit is carefully managed. It's grazed heavily for a very short duration of time. This stimulates plant growth, but at the same time, the cattle leave at least 8 to 10 inches of vegetation before they are rotated to a new pasture. Once the cattle are removed, they don't come back to that site for 3 to 6 months, which allows time for the vegetation to recover. The cattle are shifted and then confined in the new pastures using single-strand electric fencing on easily moved posts, and they haul water to the cattle each day in portable tanks. It's quite an operation, this rotation. This short duration, as I said, it stimulates root growth, it builds organic material into the soil. That in turn improves water infiltration. You'll see the lower photo there is a gentleman that's doing a core sample to look at infiltration. They'll take a core sample, pour water, and see how rapidly and how much water drains in the course of an hour. So they've greatly improved infiltration, which means that they can utilize rainfall much better. This short duration also allows for a longer recovery time of the vegetation, so it allows grasses and forbs time to regrow and produce seed. It builds the seed bank in the soil on the ranch, and that seed, of course, provides food for wildlife and encourages plant diversity. Over the course of the last 11 years, they've seen a dramatic increase in plant diversity due to this meticulous attention to grazing. So it's quite an abundance now of native forbs, as well as some of the grazing-sensitive grasses like eastern gamma grasses. It's quite common on the ranch now. And with your packets are some seed packets that Susan provided. Those didn't come directly from her ranch, but it's the gist of trying to increase forb diversity on her property. The success of this is very evident in the prairie wildlife that occurs on this ranch. It's a very complete community with wild turkey, a number of non-game birds like grasshopper sparrow, dickcissel. That nest up there is a dickcissel nest, eastern meadowlark, mourning dove, and of course northern bobwhite. The ranch also supports a population of black-tailed jackrabbits as well as white-tailed deer. There's a number of other conservation measures that they are implementing on the ranch in addition to this rotational grazing. So the ponds on the ranch, they're in the process of fencing out cattle on all of the ponds to protect water quality. So the ponds are basically used as storage for water that's then pumped or carried or hauled elsewhere to be with the cattle. The rotational grazing, it protects the riparian habitats because the cattle have limited access to those riparian areas. The ranch lies in both the headwaters of the Blue River and the headwaters of Pennington Creek. So in conserving the ranch's riparian habitats, they're also protecting water quality to their downstream neighbors in both of those watersheds. They use a hydraulic mulcher to control eastern red cedar and other potentially invasive or aggressive woody plants in their prairies. In places that were historically cropped and where the soil is somewhat disturbed, they're going in and improving soil by putting in a thin layer of compost and then overseeding with a cover crop of non-invasive annuals. These plants not only provide forage for the cattle, but it also produces seed for wildlife, and it's the first step towards restoring prairie grasses and prairie forbs to those disturbed soils. The ranch is used as a hunting and fishing area by the family members as well as ranch hands. This is a picture of Susan's grandson with his first turkey, shot, I guess it was last year, year before last year. On the ranch. It's also, the photo on the left there is her her son Blake, getting ready for a quail hunt, and then one of the ranch hands there with a very successful deer harvest on the other side. Now, since 2012, Susan has headed up the ranch operations, but in addition to the ranching, she's quite an accomplished businesswoman. She owns Prairie Dirt Solutions and Eco Wood Solutions here in the Oklahoma City metro area, and is a part owner in at least a half a dozen other businesses. On the ranch, Susan collaborates closely with the Noble Foundation, as well as a number of professional organizations in a diversity of fields, including range management, wildlife ecology, entomology, and soil science. So she's very, very collaborative in the way that she does her ranching. Through her land stewardship, she is leading by example in her part of the state, conserving wildlife, improving soil, protecting riparian habitats, and sustaining native grasslands. She's very willing to experiment with new ways of managing vegetation, and she's very eager to share that information to help other people establish sustainable grazing systems and improve soil and water quality. She's working to achieve that best balance between the needs of wildlife and the financial bottom line of her ranch. So if you will join me, Susan, why don't you come on up here in recognizing Susan, our landowner of the year.
Where's the step? So I'm really grateful to be here this morning, and it got me out of doing a trenching job to get ready to move the cattle to water. But what I want to say most importantly is what you do and how you impact the system changes everything. So my journey started with a touch from the wildlife department. I called 11 years ago, and a man came out to see us and talk about what we could do differently and started us on that trajectory. It's really, really difficult to change people that have always done it the way they've done it, and that's not the way we do it. So after lots of discussion with my husband, he was willing to step aside because I do it the way it's not supposed to be done. But, you know, we direct 22,000 acres. We now discharge clean water off of our ranches onto our neighbors' ponds. They're shocked at what's changed. It's challenging, and I will say it really takes you being brave to talk to people about how it can be different. I want you also to know that there's huge resources within the state system to help support you in those efforts. Noble Research has come along, the Conservation Commission has come alongside me. But what you all are doing here really matters. So I want to thank you all for your service. I am, I want to cry because this award means so much to me. So thank you for this nomination, Zach and Mark, and to the commission for awarding this to me. Thank you.
Susan, do you have any of your family you would like to introduce?
My daughter is here.
Come on up. Well, while she's working her way up here, Susan, presented to Susan Floyd Bergen, Oklahoma Landowner of the Year 2023 in recognition for outstanding contributions towards wildlife conservation and habitat enhancement on private property. Congratulations.
You would? All right, Landowner of the Year. I'll take two. 1, 2, 3. That's it. One more. 1, 2, 3. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, and your family too, for all you do for conservation. That's wonderful. All right. Item number 9. Richard Snow we have for presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today, honored to bring up Ethan Lovelace as he's going to accept a donation from the Blue River Fly Fishers. A little history about Ethan. Ethan's been employed for about 6 years now and has been in his current position for about a year. Has a motor that just doesn't stop. It's real instrumental in the partnership with the Blue River Fly Fishers. Of course, you guys know how important partnerships are. One, they help us achieve our mission, but also help us meet the needs of our constituents. Ethan.
Good morning, everyone. First off, I want to thank the commission and ODWC for allowing me this time to present this donation. From the Blue River Fly Fishers, I want to thank the Blue River Fly Fishers for showing up. And I do want to apologize on the agenda. I have the wrong dollar amount. I had sent Ron to the wrong dollar amount. So instead of the $13,008, it's going to be $12,308. So again, I think we're here right now at this place to honor a hidden gem that the department owns. It is a jewel, and when I'm talking about the Blue River, it's a place that I'll forever be grateful for having the opportunity to manage it as a biologist. I want to introduce, they were introduced already, but I want to introduce them again and kind of their role with the Blue River Fly Fishers. First off, we have Bill Payer. He kind of ties all the flies for these events as of late. Then we have Stephen Ruiz sitting next to him. He's a fly shop owner here in Oklahoma City. He provides a lot of the awards and prizes for the donations and everything. And then we have Barry Schrader, which is kind of our father, I guess, of this Blue River Fly Fishers that was created in 2000. And then Scott Didner, he kind of leads up the Mystery Fly Tournament that I'll get into and explain in a little bit later of how it goes about. You know, these guys are prime examples of great stewards, passionate fly fishermen, passionate conservationists. I'm happy to work with them, and I'm happy to see their vehicles pull into Blue River, and I make it a point to go talk to them. They've always got a smile on their face, and they're always carrying out trash anytime they come. You know, what they've done for us in the past, the Mystery Fly officially started in 2010, and it's a little tournament, a gathering of usually 30 to 50 individuals. But Barry, like I said, started this Blue River Fly Fishers in around 2000, and they've been accepting donations ever since. And over the time, and as far back as my records show of donations to the department of 2005, to my best estimate, there's a few years that I don't have donation dollars for, but they've raised over $75,000 for the department, and that is geared towards the betterment of Blue River. So again, I thank them for that. The last 3 months, they've really put their heart or money where their heart is, and they've donated over $32,000 in the last 3 years, and this past year was their biggest donation of $12,308, and I want to support them in that and give them this opportunity. You know, plans for spending the money this coming year is a lot of infrastructure, a lot of new signs with the new logo, new branding. I'm getting some signature coins made with the department's emblem, and then I'm going to actually, on the other side of that coin, as the first annual, have the Blue Rivers Fly Fishers logo on it and hand out to any constituents I see picking up trash or doing good deeds to help us out. There's many more projects that I have in my mind. You know, we may try to buy a few more fish. And fishing access, we're going to increase fishing access up at our catch and release zone, which is our northernmost part of the property. And before I get Barry to come up here and speak a little bit, I kind of want to give a little story of him. And if I could title this story, I would call it Homeward Bound. I was a young kid raised in North Texas. My father and I found out about Blue River and the ability to catch trout in Oklahoma, obviously a not native fish, but a unique opportunity that we can provide our constituents. And so I would say probably 98, 99, my dad took me up there for the first time, and I caught my first Oklahoma trout at Blue River. And then I had a passion or a desire to try to catch one on the fly, and went up to Scotty's, which is a local hamburger joint and fishing store, and asked if they knew anybody that could teach me, because I had no idea. And Scotty, which was the owner-operator at the time, gave me an email address of a guy. I had no idea who it was, but it was the Fishing Cowboy Blue was his email address. And this was about probably 2003, I would say. I was probably a freshman in high school. Emailed this guy, he responds back quickly, and we set up a date to go meet at Blue River, and he's gonna teach me to fly fish. And I email him, and I meet him, and it's Barry. Barry's been instrumental again. We go out, and we fish, and I catch my first trout on Blue River on the fly. And not only that, he fed my dad and I that day. And if you're familiar with Blue River, there's an area, it's called Horseshoe Falls, or anyway, but that's where he made us lunch that day in a Dutch oven. We had a stew, and it was phenomenal, and probably the best stew I ever had, but it was probably environment. And anyway, I caught my first fish that day on the fly, and forever grateful for that. And we're all created in the womb by a maker, and he's got a plan for each one of us. And I think this is just another stepping stone. I think I was destined or whatnot to be a fisheries biologist, and as time goes on, I realized that I'm a people person, and my calling's people. And in Blue River, I don't know if y'all know that, but how popular it is. We have probably 70,000 constituents through there a year, and I live there, and I work there, and I see these constituents every day, and I believe I'm making a difference. And with their donations, I can make a bigger difference, and I'm proud of that. With that said, I'd like to bring Barry up and give him a few minutes or whatever to talk about what the Blue River's meant for him. And Barry, why don't you come on up?
You'll have to pardon my voice, just the way I talk anymore. But first and foremost, we want to thank the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife for allowing us to do something, to give back to something that gives so much to us. Thank you very much for all these years. The Blue River Fly Fishers came about in 2000, the year 2000. A man named Robin Ryan called me from McKinney, Texas. He said, "Is there a group that supports Blue River Fly Fishing Group?" I said, "No, but I sure would like to see one." He said, "Let's do it." So that day, 2 hours later, he had a forum started. And before we know it, 6 months later, we have 400 or 500 members. Eventually, we changed to Facebook. We now have 2,600 members. The great thing is we formed Blue River Fly Fishers for 3 reasons: for fellowship, to support the department, and stewardship. And the stewardship is so important, I think. We try to instill stewardship in all our members and beyond. And in 2016, Ethan hadn't made it there yet, but Matt Gamble was still there. And he asked us to take on a project called Blue River, Too Lovely to Litter. And we did, and simply all it was stations every so often on the Blue River, free trash bags inside. And it said, pack it in, pack it out. And it was a big hit. Matter of fact, Keep Oklahoma Beautiful found out about it. We were nominated for an award, stewardship award from them, and we won our category. So that was very pleasing. But I think what Ethan said about Blue River being a jewel, I think Paul Mock used to say that a lot. And I didn't see Blue River until 1981. And I had grew up just 30 miles from Blue River. Never heard of it. And I thought, is this Oklahoma's best kept secret? And the first time I seen it, I fell in love. I mean, absolute love. It is a masterpiece of nature. And anything like this deserves our attention. It deserves our respect. And we have enjoyed having the annual fundraiser, and we hope it helps the department. We want to continue. So with that being said, thank you again so much, and long live Blue River.
Stay up here. You want to come up? Come on up.
dressed up. Y'all slip in there. Get in there. Where are you? Good.
Down low. All right, guys.
Some of that stew.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know, but I bet it would be, Thank you. Thank you, Ethan. Appreciate it. All right, Richard, you're up again. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a motion to accept?
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye.
Commissioner Deal? Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Zelps? Commissioner Dillingham? Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Hi. Thank you again, Blue River Fly Fishing. It's awesome. All right, now you're up.
Yeah, thanks again. Before we give out this year's Fisheries Division Professional of the Year Award, much like you heard from Law and Wildlife earlier, we want to touch on the other nominees that we had. And in total, we had 6. So Cliff Sager, he's a senior biologist down in South Central Oklahoma, supervised by Matt Mock, that's in attendance here. He's spent his career 20 years with us. During that time, he's really become an out-of-box thinker. People call him, ask questions and whatnot, become really a mentor for the division. And that can't be understated enough. Then we have Colton Fullman. He is a assistant hatchery biologist at Byron, Oklahoma, at the hatchery. He has just an outstanding work ethic. There's really, truly nothing that you can put in front of this individual that he can't accomplish and conquer. It's pretty amazing. Then you have Verlin Monroe. He's our heavy equipment operator. He's been with the department for 25 years. He's probably the most sought-after employee that we have in Fish Division, not only including within Fish Division, but from other divisions also. And then you have David Bogner. His short time here, he's really been a trailblazer and made a mark. He's a fisheries biologist down in southeast Oklahoma. During his time, this past year with the supervisor moving on, he really stepped into that role, and really anything that I asked of him, he accomplished, and accomplished with ease and grace. And then you have Michael Hawley, a very young biologist. Although he has 8 years in, he's only been a bio for 4. And he really has taken to drilling down into his data, critically thinking, and really looking at it through a different lens that is kind of unique. And this year's recipient of the our Fish Division Professional Worker of the Year is Anthony Rogers. I almost called you Tony, man. I'm sorry. It's just like ingrained in my head. Come on up, man. So Tony has been a biologist in the streams program since 2015. He's played a major role in developing the stream program since the start. So in the past, the stream program was, really influential with trying to do stream bank stabilization. And so in 2015, with the help of Tony, we really changed it up to more of a ecological-based approach. Anthony has really been an anchor of that program. We do have turnover in Fish Division, and those are the couple of positions it seems like we have turn on. But Anthony has stuck it with us, has been loyal, and his hard work has really shined. Got to find my place here. Anthony also takes part in teaching the staff, leading the staff. He's really brought up some of the staff that he supervises by teaching them Program R, data analytics, how to take data, how to sample, and also work with GIS. He handles all the scientific collector permits and applications and associated reports for Fish Division. He's the agency contact for many pass-through research projects. He volunteers to give presentations to any sportsman group and is always beyond repair. And that's something that, JB, Jim Burrows, his supervisor, is always about. If anybody's prepared, it is definitely Anthony here for anything and everything. He also assists with responsibility of planning all stream field work. They do a lot of fall largemouth bass sampling or black bass sampling, springtime catfish sampling, as long as community sampling all through the summer months. These samples are located all across Oklahoma, which puts these guys in the field overnight stays and away from home for many days at a time, weeks at a time. Let's see. A lot of the data that Anthony is collecting is basically to determine the detection probabilities and also occupancy modeling. He's a phenomenal example of an employee. He keeps a positive attitude. He welcomes additional duties, my man. He is dependable, accountable, legitimately cares about the resource in our anglers. He cares about the legacy that he is leaving and tries to make a difference for the research. He strives for his effort to benefit others. Anthony has been successful in publishing 10 publications since 2018. Some of the journals that he is publishing is North American Journal of Freshwater Management, Ichthyology and Herpetology, Southeastern Naturalist, Journal of Freshwater Ecology, Fish Management and Ecology. He not only does he publish, he also presents in national meetings and at Southern Division. Anthony serves on the Catfish Committee and the SWIG Research Committee. He serves the Student Technical Committee and involved with the Students Chair for the Oklahoma chapter of the American AFS. Further exemplifying his desire to help and train others, hoping for a career in this field. He supervises interns and tries to teach them, not boss them. He realizes that this is an opportunity for a student and not just slave labor. He sees the big picture and things and looks at the specifically with tight focus while working towards a greater impact that actions sometimes have. So, Tony, much appreciated, sir.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to thank the commission for all you guys do and for the opportunity to be here today. And I'll just echo kind of a sentiment I shared at the Fish Division meeting in June. And that's, I consider this an incredible honor. Everybody he listed that was nominated is well-deserving. So it means a lot to receive this. And while it's been given to me, I kind of consider this an award on behalf of our stream program because it has been a team effort from the beginning, and I couldn't do what I do without, my supervisor and fellow biologists and technicians. And what I really think drives our stream program is that top to bottom, we have a passion for what we do, which makes it easy to show up every day and, put the extra effort in collecting data and then, publishing it, going that extra mile. So again, thank you for the award and thank you for the time today.
Thank you.
All right, guys, right here. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. There it is.
Thank you again, Anthony. Great job. All right. Garrett of ODWC.
Okay, thank you. So you may recall a couple of years ago we started an award, and it helps put it all in context here today with the raft of awards, this being the awards recognition commission meeting. But, you've got law enforcement, Game Warden of the Year. You've got Biologist, Technician of the Year, and Wildlife, which we'll have next on the agenda, or here in a couple of agenda items, I think. And you've got Fisheries Professional of the Year. But we started a category of awards for those that don't qualify for all of those, because there are other, of course, big contributors within the agency, and that, of course, is what the Spirit of ODWC Award is all about. It's another peer-nominated award, as most of these others are that you've heard about today, and so it's not just, you know, JD's pal within the agency or anything like that. It's you know, a much higher honor, which is what do your peers think of you and who's the most deserving. And in this case, we had a number of nominees from David Arbor, Jeff Pennington, Lance Meek, Marnie Loftus, Micah Holmes, and Michael Bergen, all nominated for the award and all very deserving and worthy of the award. But the award winner this year was nominated by 3 of her peers. Independently. Nobody got together and knew what the other one was doing and that sort of thing. And so this year's Spirit of ODWC Award goes to Carla Beatty. Carla leads with trust. She recently revamped the leadership development program within the agency into 3 levels, which allows all ODWC employees to oversee their excuse me, own learning and destiny. Carla makes her educational classes and programs fun and enjoyable, which is a tall order. How many times have all of us in leadership or budding leadership within the agency attended those classes put on by OMES, where we sit over at the Jim Thorpe building over there and we're bored to tears all day long? So everybody can attest. In answering a question or addressing an issue, she's as honest as she can be. If it's not something she can speak to, she will tell you and refer you to the person that can best assist. She supports the agency goals in a positive way and very professional manner. She does her best to assist employees in making ODWC a better place to work while fulfilling our mission. She doesn't hesitate to volunteer to help with any projects and activities that she's asked to contribute to. Her dedication to help employees with the transition to Microsoft Office 365, electronic timesheets, Workday, leadership training, providing material for outreach events, oftentimes goes unnoticed, because she's the one behind the scenes working to make sure it all gets done for the overall success of the agency. And so, of course, nobody is more deserving of the Spirit of ODWC Award in its 3rd year than Carla Beatty. And Carla, you will, I promise, get more than just a certificate once that trophy gets finished. But please come on up, Carla. Mike is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm honored that my peers think this highly of me. I do want to reiterate what Anthony said, is that in the HR section, it's a team effort, and I wouldn't be able to do what I do without my team and without our leader, Vicki Skaggs, who honors us and trusts us to do our jobs. And if we need help, she's always there to give it to us. So I think I want to share this with all of the HR team, and I just want to thank the commission and the rest of the leadership with the department. I love this job. I love all the people, and it's an honor to work for all of you guys, because that's why I'm here, is to make your job a little easier so that you feel as fulfilled in your career as I do. Thank you.
Please. Good.
Ready for me again?
We are.
Okay. Just a couple of more award recognitions to go, but the next bunch got their trophies and awards given to them already, but we thought it would be an awesome opportunity for us to recognize for the commission and the entire agency how, once again, our Communications and Education Division racked up and brought home 10 awards at the recent Association for Conservation Information's National Awards Program, where there were 35 categories of awards and 598 total entries, and of all that, our team brought home 10 of those awards. So as I call your award out, please come up to the front so everybody can see you, and you can do whatever, walk in, dance, or flip or backflip or whatever you want to do as you come up. Yes, I'm talking to you. So we had 3 first place trophies in video outdoor recreation for Champions of Change by Blake Podasky. It was his second year in a row for Blake winning this category, so start making your way up here. Don't be shy. Best, yeah, come on. Best social media campaign was Gar Week, put on by Sarah Sutherland and her crew. Also won this category in 2019. Come on up, Sarah. And the regulations publications, yes, they give out awards for that. The fishing and hunting regulations that Smokey Solis and the entire regs committee helped put together, so congrats on that. We had 5 second place trophies in video how-to instructional. Redbud Jelly, which was also produced by Blake Podasky. Excuse me, it missed the first place by only 0.67 points too, by the way. And a special nod to the talent, Tel Judkins, who was featured in that video, who I believe actually may have some Redbud Jelly for everybody to taste and sample as we break up here today. So make sure you make your way back.
It'll be out here.
It'll be out here. He's back there preparing it all right now. I think biscuits and Redbud Jelly are coming. So if you've never sampled the Redbud Jelly, be sure you partake. Best social media presence, ODWC's social media, Sarah Sutherland and crew finished first the previous 2 years and third 3 years ago, so brought home second place. That's just because they got to spread it around every once in a while, right? You can't dominate it every time, Sarah. Photography, scenic photography, fishing access by Darren Hill. For graphics, logos and illustrations, a rich history and a bright future, the ODWC logo. So featuring the transition from the old to the new logo, and that's Smokey Solis, along with the ODWC brand committee. For poster, another second place, the Hunters Against Hunger poster that Smokey Solis also put together. We finished second last year and third 2 years ago on that poster, so we're bringing home another second place. We had 2 third place trophies for video recurring program, Outdoor Oklahoma, and of course that's Blake Podasky, Darren Hill, and Todd Craighead. They finished second last year. Notable is that since that format has changed, the show has been scoring better and finishing top 3 every time. So congrats to the Outdoor Oklahoma TV team. A one-time publication award in book and report, the Hunters Against Hunger program guide, also put together by Smokey Solis, so congrats there. And it's worth mentioning, no small feat, that Blake Podasky was also voted by his peers to be the president of the Association for Conservation Information at the recent conference. It's a huge role and a big honor, and it's worth mentioning that in its 85-year history, Blake will make the 6th ODWC employee to lead the group, and with other past presidents being Micah Holmes, Nels Rodefeld, Juanita Mahaffrey, who was the first editor of Outdoor Oklahoma back in 1945. So we will also be hosting the association's 2026 conference, so stay tuned for more details on locations, activities, and agenda for that. But let's give our award winners a big hand.
Congratulations, you all. Great job.
Congrats.
All right. Bill Dinkins, we have you up next.
All righty, thank you. So let's start with our Technician of the Year. But before I do that, just a quick recap. In Wildlife Division, we've been recognizing our Biologist of the Year since 1988. And then in 1997, we started recognizing our Wildlife Technician of the Year. 5 main categories we evaluate: job performance, public outreach, attitude, task sharing, and special accomplishments. This year for the technician category, we had 3 nominations. We had David Banna from our South Central region. We had Kevin Anson from Southeast region. And then our winner is going to be Junior Kester. So I asked the supervisors, Kurt Allen is Junior's supervisor, to send me some talking points, if you will, because as you can imagine, these nominations are fairly lengthy. So I don't want to sell them short, but I am going to read off what the supervisor provided me. I don't think, did Kurt Allen make it? I don't think he did today. Okay. So some of the accomplishments that Kurt mentioned for Junior, he worked over 10,000 acres of prescribed burns last year, spent 180 acres on maintenance and repair of equipment, maintained 49 miles of WMA roads and fire guards, gave WMA presentations and tours to over 74 students, mowed and or planted 460 acres. He helped supervise the intern and a volunteer, worked 7 controlled hunts, spread 400 tons of gravel on 3 different wildlife management areas, and then he regularly assists with other WMAs as needed. Exceeds standards on his performance evaluations. He completed our Wildlife Resource Professional program, which he volunteered to do, and to step up and spend the time and effort on his own to do that. Says he has a spot for FFA, sees it as a logical stepping stone towards a career with ODWC. So he fosters that interest and interaction with the local FFA group, looking for ways to help improve their knowledge and preparedness. His insight and knowledge of the local water, geography, geology, local history, local people, and businesses are invaluable. And then, if y'all may recall, last year, Junior was here presenting to you all our Landowner of the Year. So he's done that, and he's wrote an article for your side of the fence as well. So Junior, if you want to work your way up here, like I said, he's got multiple WMAs that he helps take care of. Been with us almost 10 years. So just real quick, Junior, it's an honor and a privilege to present Junior Kester, Wildlife Technician of the Year for 2022.
I'll be very brief, but I do just want to say, listening to the other division award winners, the one thing that always comes to my ears is that passion. And I knew from just a kid, this is what I wanted to do. I love my job, and I love what I do, and I love working with the best people in the state. So thank you. This is a great honor for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Junior, I have a question. Are you married?
I am. That would be my wife in the back, Sarah.
She must be a saint because you're never home.
Hey, guys.
Man, I just put her on
Good
the
idea.
spot.
She deserves that award too.
Bring out the saint.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. name on you. Good job.
Great job, Junior. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, switch over to our biologist of the year. Same setup, same criteria. We had 6 nominations this year for our biologist of the year. We had Russell Perry in the Northeast region. We had Jay Rote in the Central region. Curtis Tackett from our Wildlife Diversity. Marcus Thibodeau from our Southwest region. And Jared Davis from our Programs section. And this year's winner went to Brett Cooper, who's in our Private Land section. Brett, if you want to start working your way up here, please. So Josh is here. You've heard from Josh, his supervisor. Same deal, asked him for some bullet points here. So I'll start with saying that in 2022, Brett made over 53 technical assistance visits, covering 78,171 acres. He also worked with 23 landowners, writing approximately $90,000 of cost share program agreements, most of which focused on lesser prairie chicken habitat enhancement or restoration. He put together 27 claims for a total of 183,000 cost share reimbursements through our Wildlife Habitat Improvement Program, Partners Program, Lesser Prairie Chicken Program, and Voluntary Offset Program. During the initial listing of the prairie chicken in 2012, ODWC negotiated a candidate conservation agreement with assurances, you may have heard, a CCAA, with Fish and Wildlife Service to allow coverage for agricultural landowners in Oklahoma for practices that might result in take of lesser prairie chicken. Brett has been the primary coordinator of the ODWC CCA program, conducting annual evaluations and enrollments of these properties, and we're talking over 400,000 acres, so that's quite a job. It says Brett secured and coordinated a booth at the Woodward Farm Show to interact with and provide outreach to the public. And Brett's probably one of the largest touches, if you will, on the Oklahoma landscape of our ODWC employees. His interactions with landowners in northwest Oklahoma have positively impacted many tens of thousands of acres through cost share programs, conservation agreements, CCAAs, and general technical assistance. Brett's background and abilities allow him to really meet those landowners where they are and truly empathize with them, balancing his recommendations for them between wildlife concerns and the landowner's needs to make a living on their property. Josh wrote, Brett's loyalty to and passion, there's that word again, for the agency drives him to do all his work with excellence and professionalism. He exceeds expectations and proud to nominate him for Biologist of the Year. Again, Brett, been here almost 10 years with
Almost 9 now.
Almost 9
Yep.
with ODWC in our private land section. So congratulations, Brett, for Wildlife Biologist of the Year 2022.
I'll make it pretty brief, guys. I couldn't do any of this without all the great folks that I work with. There's numerous great folks that make this a lot easier. But we could always use 50 to 100 more.
Congratulations and thank you, Brett.
Good.
Very good. All right. Next item is the consideration to vote to approve or amend, reject, or take other action on the meeting minutes of June 5th.
Move to approve.
Okay. Any discussion or, I think, roll call?
Commissioner Mabry? Commissioner Deal? Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Zelps? Commissioner Dillingham? Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. So we're thinking maybe it would be a good idea to take a 10-minute break. Excuse me. Been sitting a long time, so if that would be back, we'd be back at 10:20. That works? Thank you all.
And then if I'm going to use something that I actually have to rig, it's going to be weightless and weedless on a 3/0, 4/0, or 5/0 hook that looks just like this. I like owner hooks. They're a thick wire, they really sharp point, but Gamakatsu, Eagle.
Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead. For several decades, the Wildlife Department has hosted fishing clinics all across the state. But as our world has changed around us, we in turn have had to learn to adapt and grow in response. So a new era of additional fishing clinics are now offered virtually. They're still conducted live by our fishing coordinator, but we're able now to reach a whole new audience. These Ask an Angler virtual fishing courses are not intended to replace the traditional in-person clinics like at a city park pond, but it offers us an opportunity to go more in depth with certain subjects. So if you're wanting to get, say, into the weeds on things like pre-spawn bass tips, or maybe winter pond fishing techniques, or crappie fishing tips, these virtual classes are perfect. You can either watch them live or find them on our Outdoor Oklahoma YouTube channel. A wildlife department that adapts its ways of communication to help make you the most educated and effective sportsman you can be. Just another reason to love Oklahoma and the adventures that await you.
Well, it's been a while since our last catfishing episode, and I know there's a lot of you out there who really enjoy bank fishing for catfish just as much as I do, so we're going to give it another try today. In our first episode, we focused on points that jut out into lakes. That's one of my favorite spots to fish, especially if there's been a headwind or a flanking headwind blowing into that point. Sometimes very productive for catfish in lakes. The next episode, we just fished an old mud flat. Many of our lakes here in Oklahoma have, especially on the upper end of the lakes, mud flats with basically no topography, no structure to speak of, no variation in depth, all the things you normally look for in a good catfishing spot. But those mud flats get really, really productive, especially in the springtime, particularly when the shad start spawning and you can really fill up a stringer sometimes. But we're going to switch gears today a little bit and employ one of my favorite tactics for bank fishing for catfish, and that's fishing in running water after a flooding rain, which is what we've had here in the Texoma region. We've had an exceptionally dry spring. Today's the last day of April, but a couple of days ago we finally got that big rain, over 4 inches in most of the basin of Texoma. And as you can see behind me here, the water's running. There's many creeks that run into Texoma. This is one in particular that's just starting to widen out into the lake, which is a place I really like to target when it's running. Still a lot of foam and debris coming down. There's a lot of rough fish in here, carp, buffalo, gar, drum. Hopefully we can wade through them and catch a couple of catfish, because catfish love to nose up into fresh, muddy water. Now that's probably an oxymoron, but you know what I mean. When the flooding water comes down these creeks, it brings all types of nutrients and bait, all types of dead material washing down, and they basically go on a feeding frenzy. And hopefully we'll have some up in here looking to eat today. Now what I'm going to use today, and these are basically 6-foot Walmart specials. And I have old Ambassador 5000s on each of them. I bought them used off of eBay. And anyone in the know on catfishing reels knows that an old Ambassador 5000 especially the old Swedish models, are fantastic. Maybe one of the best, if not the best, overall catfishing reel. If you take even decent care of them, they can last you years and perhaps even decades. I've got them spooled up with Berkley Trilene big game 30-pound test line, so we can hold anything if we happen to get a hold of a big one today. And basically, my setup is real simple, same as always. I got a 4-ounce bank sinker on the bottom. Up above that, about 1.5 feet, I'll tie a leader into my line, probably 10 inches, and then have a Eagle Claw wide bend laser sharp number 4 hook on that. I also always bring my favorite rod with me. It'll hopefully see some action at some point today. It's just a real limber medium action, again, Walmart 6-foot rod that I've got an old Shimano Calcutta with 20-pound Berkley big game line on, because, you know, I get a fish on that and it kind of harkens back to the cane pole days with all of the flexibility. So I always enjoy catching fish on that as well. Bait for today, now in running water, almost any bait will work because they're out here looking for anything they can get a hold of to eat. Worms, crawdads, cut perch, chicken liver, shad, you name it. But my go-to bait is always fresh shad. And I was fortunate enough to catch some big gizzard shads a few days ago in my cast net. Now I'll mention something about shad too. The little shad don't last very long, a day or two, and they start getting soft and they won't stay on your hook very well. But I want you to know those big gizzard shad, if you'll take care of them, keep them relatively dry and packed in ice, they're good to go for a week and even more. In fact, these shad I have today, I've got cut up into chunks, but they're 5 days old, so we'll see how they work out. I also have some earthworms. Of course, that's a fantastic bait in running water. The earthworms I have, I actually grow myself. I had an old boy that was throwing away a chest-type freezer. It was inoperable, and so he gave it to me for free. I bought a 50-pound bag of what's called spangled peat moss from Walmart. I saturated that peat moss, set it in the bottom of that chest freezer, probably about 1 foot deep. Put my earthworms in there. They're called Georgia Browns. They're not as long as a night crawler, but they're real fishy worms. They'll definitely catch catfish if there's any around. And I feed them about once a week with chicken crumbles. It's basically chicken feed. You can get a 50-pound bag at a feed store for $7, $8. And if you think about it, you can hardly buy 2 containers of night crawlers at the bait shop for that much money. So it's pretty economical. And I keep that chest freezer on the north side of my shop building so it doesn't get that direct hot sunlight during the summer. And they'll keep all year round and they'll reproduce in there. So you'll always have bait available when it's time to go fishing. And lastly, I've got some grub worms. Just white grubs, beetle grubs. I don't use them very often because I don't find them, quite frankly, very often. But funny story, a couple of days ago, we was having one of those big deluges of rain, and I looked outside. I have a dog, it's a shepherd mix named Shep, real original, I know, but he was a rescue dog, and I saw him eating stuff off of the ground, running here and there. I didn't have any idea what he was doing, so I went out there to take a look, and those grub worms were coming up out of that wet ground to get out of the water, and he was picking them off one by one and swallowing them down, kind of like a great blue heron swallowing a perch or something. I didn't know dogs would eat grub worms, but this one will. Maybe he's watched too many episodes of Naked and Afraid, I'm not sure, but I was able to get ahead of him and get me about a dozen, so we'll put grub worm on one of these poles and see if it'll produce. Grub worm was always one of my dad's favorite fishing baits, and my dad and I, this time of year in April, would always take a week. I would take off work. We would fish all week, every day, bank fishing for catfish. We did that for decades. And he passed away last day of November in 2020, died of COVID-19 actually. And so I'm gonna dedicate this day to him because I know he would love to be here today. Now he lived a long life. He was just 2 weeks shy of 95 years old, healthy the whole time, World War II, Battle of the Bulge vet. So he had a full life and he's gone on to his reward, so that's a good thing. But we'll dedicate this day to him. But enough talking, we're gonna get these baited out and tossed in and see if we can get a rod to bend. We'll put a piece of cut shad on this first one here. And I've cut these shad up. They come off of a big shad. I just fillet them off of the shad and then cut them into, probably 2-inch strips that are probably a 1/2 inch wide. Now the thing to remember is you want to have plenty of your hook exposed after you put put this chunk of shad on there. So just come down probably 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch below the top of the cut bait, bring it through, make sure any scales that were on the barb or the tip of the hook are removed, so you have that sharp hook and your barb available. And that's a good thing about these wide bend hooks. You have plenty of hook remaining, because that's a big bait and you don't want to get the bait over the point of your hook or you'll lose the hook set every time. Put that one right out by that floating debris out there. That's always a little bit of structure. Even in running water, I like to target it. We're going to put a grub worm on this hook. It's one of those big white grubs I was talking to you about earlier. Now, one thing I will do with these, they've got a natural bend in them, and if you bring the hook through that natural bend, sometimes that worm will be in the way of your point. So what I'll do is come behind the head there, the opposite direction of the bend, cast that out and see if something's interested in a grub today. Put some earthworms on this one. These are those little Georgia brown worms that I was telling you about earlier. They're not big, but they're active. And I don't think there's any proper way to hook worms on. I have a way I do it. I like to leave as much of the worm wiggling off of the hook as possible. So I'll basically grab I'll come down from one end of the worm, just a few millimeters, bring the point of the hook through, maybe 1/4 inch, bring it back out, fold the worm over, do that again, and then come back out of the worm before I reach his other tip. So you have all of those worm tips floundering around out in the water. I think that's a good thing. I like a full hook of worms as long as I've got plenty of the end of the hook exposed, the tip of the hook. That'll do it. It's on those earthworms.
You ready?
We will resume our agenda here. Item 15 is our director's report. J.D. Strong.
Thank you. Couple of quick items that were not in the packet, but we did get in the governor's proclamation for National Shooting Sports Month, which is the month of August. And so I might just point out a couple of things from the proclamation, which the National Shooting Sports Foundation works with state wildlife agencies across the country to make sure that everybody remembers and appreciates the importance of hunting, firearms, and shooting sports. And in Oklahoma, it's important to note that the firearm and ammunition industry contributed over $400 million to the Oklahoma economy, supported over 2,500 jobs, and those engaged in shooting sports and hunting contributed more than $10 million in funding to wildlife and conservation efforts in 2022 alone. And so, again, Governor Stitt proclaimed August 2023 National Shooting Sports Month. More to come on that. You also have in your packet, I know Commissioner Gaddis, Commissioner Barwick heard more about this at the WAFWA summer meeting, Western Association summer meeting out in Santa Fe, but our national association, actually International Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, did update the commission guidebooks. Everybody should have that in your packets as well in case you're interested in reading that at your leisure.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to read that. I mean, it's very informative. I think it kind of sets the stage of some of the things we should be doing, and also has the model of North American conservation, which a lot of people don't know about. So I encourage you to read that.
Yeah, it's a great read. Okay, you've got the federal report in your packets from Brittany. Most of that 9 or 10 pages is an outline of both the House and the Senate appropriations proposals. There's still more work to come on that. There'll be reconciliation between the House and the Senate at some point. There's a little bit of information towards the back. We know Recovering America's Wildlife Act continues to have traction again this Congress. We'll see if it gets across the finish line. Definitely a different Congress with Republicans in control on the House side, but Representative Westerman from Arkansas having jurisdiction over the issue on the House side is definitely provided positive feedback, and we expect to see maybe a draft of the House version. Senate version is already looking for floor time, which we hope will happen after they get off August break, but because Congress is on its August break, there's not a whole lot of activity other than a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. So feel free to take a look at that and let me know. Similarly, not a ton going on over at the state capitol this time of year either, so Catherine's here if there are any questions, but we'll continue to keep you all updated. I know it's been just a lot of work fielding individual requests and then gearing up for a lot of interim meetings and things that she definitely has on her list, looking at the calendar when we can expect them to be in town over the coming months so we can plan some sort of gathering here at the department ahead of session. Their attendance in their travel to Oklahoma City is typically pretty sporadic this time of year. It's kind of hit and miss, so we're looking for opportunities to get them when we've got the bulk of them in town. That typically starts happening towards closer to the end of the year, so stay tuned for more on that. In my director's report, of course, the Commission Rules Committee is going to meet here at 9 a.m. on September 12th. I didn't get in there, but you all should have received the invitation. September 15th will be the opening for the Caw shooting range, and I know I've heard from a couple at least that plan to attend. The Oklahoma Waterfowl Festival will be held again, second year in a row, at G&H Decoy in Henrietta. We'll have a number of folks from our staff there. I'm sure Jerry Shaw, for example, game wardens from that area, number of others. And I'm sure Rick will mention it in his report from the foundation, but again, the September 29th Call of the Wild Gala for the foundation will be at, again, the Omni in downtown Oklahoma City. Lots of activity in admin division you can see there. Flipping through, again, you can read all this when you get a chance, but just to highlight a few things as we go through. We did have, Fisheries Division did have its second year of stocking the tiger bass, essentially, the F1 hybrid largemouth bass, Florida F1 largemouth bass in Grand Lake, 93,000 advanced fingerlings. Again, this is year 2 of a proposed 10-year project trying to evaluate the introduction of Florida genetics in a northern lake, and of course with that F1 being a hybrid between a Florida and a northern bass, we hope, we have high hopes that it'll do great stuff. They're continuing the renovation work at Jap Beaver Lake, removing silt around the drain pipe, shoreline, and boat ramp, and the engineers on the restart of the Watonga Dam project completed their survey of the area and are now working working on preliminary plans, which have already been discussed to really kind of flesh out the scope of the more expanded project on Watonga Dam, with hopes that we'll have those plans in place and ready to start construction come February at the latest. C&E Division, Amanda and the rest of the crew had a successful grand opening of the Pack Saddle, newly opened Pack Saddle range a few weeks ago. Jason Smith worked on and submitted the Arcadia Archery Range planning grant, which is a project supported by the foundation. The Oklahoma Fishing and Hunting Regulations, which you heard earlier, Smokey won awards for. It should be delivered today, last I heard. We'll see. But those will be hitting the streets soon. Don's working on the waterfowl stamp design contest, which will feature the Gadwall this year, and that contest closes at the end of this month. Kara and Casey are working together on a photo sharing platform for hunters, similar to what Skylar and Kara developed for anglers, the dock, which has become very popular on the fishing side of things. So we're hoping putting a place for folks to kind of a bragging board, if you will, for folks to post their hunting pictures will be equally successful. I mentioned earlier all the awards racked up by C&E Division at their annual conference, and don't forget to get out there and sample that redbud jelly once we adjourn too. Wildlife Division, lots of work going on, of course, ramping up for hunting season across all the WMAs. The August quail roadside, pheasant brood surveys are underway, as are the summer turkey surveys, running through the end of this month. So this is that time of year when everybody wants to know, and in fact, everybody I see, they see that emblem on me, they want to know what the quail hunting is going to look like this coming year. So it's starting to crank up. And so we'll have more answers after the August survey, and in particular after the October surveys are completed as we get closer to that hunting season. Real Tree Outdoors recognized Oklahoma as one of 7 states in an online article called Serious Sleeper States with Big White Tails. So the link to that article is in your report. Again, the WMA activity's ramping up. Pack Saddle, September 16th, will host a open house dove season event. So ramping up for that season as well. Law enforcement, the game wardens did receive their new Glocks Model 45s with the red dot sights. Foundation was generous in helping come up with the ammunition for those as they're switching to 9mm rounds. And the state process for acquiring that ammunition was going to take like 18 months and cost, I think, about twice as much as we got it for at the end of the day. So Foundation really helped out in acquiring that ammunition quickly and much more cheaply than we could have otherwise. Of note, some significant retirements in Law Enforcement Division with Captain Jeff Brown from District 1 and Captain Mark Reichenberger from District 8, as well as Lieutenant Max Crocker from District 8 have all turned in their retirement paperwork and are going to retire over the course of the next couple of months. So I think, Nate, you all added that up, and that's about 110 years of combined experience going out the door in law enforcement in just the next couple of months. So with that, be happy to answer any questions, and then I'll turn it over to Rick for an update from the foundation. But I might see if there's anything for me.
Yeah, JD, I sent out a news article, I know to some of the commissioners, and I'm not sure I got all of them, that there's now been patented a pretty effective hog poison. And I think your reply was that we had to get through the EPA process. And I think some of the commissioners got to go down to Texas and tour the research, and they told us what they were using. It was an effective poison.
Yeah.
And now they apparently have got it patented in such a way that it's pretty effective. What is the EPA process, and how could we move that along?
Well, they're a federal agency, so they're completely out of our hands, right, and control. So I would imagine that it'll be members of our congressional delegation that are going to be really interested in seeing that process be as quick and efficient as possible. You know, while we want to get that bait out on the landscape as quickly as possible, we're also going to be interested as a wildlife agency in making sure that it doesn't kill non-target species. So having a bit of vetting through that EPA pesticide registration process won't necessarily be a bad thing. It'll turn into a bad thing if there's a bunch of unnecessary red tape and delays. But yeah, that article you sent is a sodium nitrate based toxin, which is exactly what they were working on when we went down to Kerrville Wildlife Management Area outside of Kerr, Texas. And even at that time, their big struggle was how can we encapsulate it into a bait that makes it less bioavailable to non-target species. And they were looking at different delivery mechanisms to make it less available to non-target species, with bears and raccoons being the hardest thing to keep away because they can get into everything, as we all know, right? So we'll see. But very promising, and it looks like they figured out an encapsulation method that may make it much less biodegradable and that sort of thing. So we shall see.
For some of y'all who may or may not know, one of the things that was impressive was that they had to force feed deer enough of it to cause any problems with the deer. In other words, the deer wouldn't eat enough naturally that ever caused them problems, which was pretty impressive. But some, as you said, some ground animals might have had some problems with it.
Yeah, and I think in some of the initial testing of this same sodium nitrate based, no, it's sodium nitrite. I'm sorry, getting the chemical compound wrong. So there were also issues early on in those tests they showed us down in Texas with vultures being contaminated and it being toxic to them after the fact as they're eating on the carrion. So there's going to be some tricky things to work through before they get there. But yeah, very promising.
Some of our new commissioners, what was interesting is apparently there is, it affects red blood cells' ability to carry oxygen. And so the hogs would just lay down and go to sleep. They didn't scream, holler, nothing. They just lay down and go to sleep, and that's it.
Correct.
So it was pretty impressive what they were doing. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah. It's also ironic that it's a preservative in bacon.
Yeah. But
gotta appreciate that.
I learned in our chemistry class, we have an enzyme that offsets that. So that's the reason it doesn't affect humans.
Correct. I eat enough bacon, it would kill me. That's
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for me? Rick, update on the foundation?
Thank you, JD, commissioners. Thanks for having me. JD brought up our Call of the Wild Gala is coming up September 29th at the Omni. Thanks to those of you that have already signed up. I'm available if any more of you'd like to sign up. We're looking forward to it. We'll be finishing up the video of our honoree Sean Trotsky today with a few more clips. The OK Waterfowl Festival that JD mentioned at G&H Decoys in Henrietta, September 23rd, Saturday. It's also the State Duck Calling Championships with whoever wins goes to the national championships as well. And all proceeds benefit the Oklahoma Wildlife Conservation Foundation. So we really appreciate G&H's partnership and leadership on hosting that event and making the foundation the beneficiary of that. Have some very exciting news that I mentioned to a few of you, but we have been working with Midway USA and Midway USA's foundation. And Reagan mentioned earlier, how hunters, there's a silent group of hunters, shooters, shooting sports that are so actively engaged and really make wildlife conservation and other things tick. Well, we're proud to announce that working with Midway USA that we have just launched a $950,000 endowment for youth shooting sports in Oklahoma.
That's awesome.
So that will be spinning off funds that will be funding youth shooting sports in Oklahoma going forward in perpetuity, we hope. Typically it's about 5%, but it depends on how they produce. And the Midway USA Foundation has been so generous that they have given us a window with a 2-to-1 match through the end of November or until the funds are used up. So anything that we donate back, we'll get a 2-to-1 match going for the endowment. We had it fully funded, and their window for requesting the annual payout was in a week and a half, and I had the gall to ask if we would be eligible, and they said absolutely. And in fact, that payout will be eligible for 2-to-1 if you'll put it back in the endowment as a seed fund. So we'll be receiving almost $50,000 in the next couple weeks, and then we will donate it back into the endowment and get a 2-to-1 match. So we will have over a $1.1 million endowment for Oklahoma youth shooting sports, and that can go towards range development as well. So really excited about that. Appreciate Colin Berg and the team at the department. We've worked diligently on this for over 2 years. We first met with them about 2.5 years ago and couldn't make it make sense, and by golly, God bless them. Great outcome there. Couple other exciting announcements. Happy to say the Arcadia Lake project that came up earlier with the archery range, there's a 9-to-1 federal match for the building of that archery fund. The foundation funded the engineering and planning study, which will be going underway shortly for this year, and we have made a commitment to fully fund the match portion of the building of the archery range, which will be well in excess of $1 million for the archery range. And we have some exciting, I haven't received the written announcement, but have been told we are receiving a significant grant that will be a matching grant. So we will be announcing an 18-to-1 match for anything going to Arcadia, the Arcadia Lake match, which we hope will be an opportunity for people to make $5 and $10 contributions and really make the public aware of what's going on at Arcadia Lake, which is the local community. Commissioner Barwick and I met with them probably about a year ago or so. And the archery range was the #1 additional project they wanted at the lake. And so they've been helpful to the department on road work and some other things, so great partnership there. Finally, also the Hackberry Flat, we've heard about that. The foundation funded the engineering and planning study for bringing water back to Hackberry Flat this in the last month or so. So that study is fully funded to receive the federal matches, and you've already heard about the duty ammo. Any questions?
Rick?
Yes, sir.
How long do you anticipate that it'll take to do the engineering study for Hackberry?
That's more of a department question. We leave the running and building of the operations to the department. They're the experts on that. We're trying to bring, when we can partner and identify funds to bring to bear, help bring additional dollars.
So that was in a grant, a whisper grant for this year that takes about 12 months, so it'll wrap up next June-ish?
Probably go past the beginning of next fiscal year, but.
Okay, so maybe into a year from now-ish,
Yeah.
should be?
Thank you. That's the hope.
Yeah. That's right, because we probably didn't start it right at July 1. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions for Rick? Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. All right, Amanda Stork, do you have some financials for us?
I think this microphone has gone up and down today. Okay, today I have the financials for you through June 30, 2023. On your first report, it is the combined balance sheet for all fund types and account groups. If you look at the 6/30/2023 column, our total liability and fund balance is $498,507,911, of which $22,221,718 is liabilities. Most of that making up compensated absences payable and our accounts payable and other funds. On our combined balance sheets for our trust funds, our expendable trust fund balance is $34,712,744. Our non-expendable trust is $102,823,623. Our pension trust is $128,968,377. Our DC trust is $7,343,690, total of which is $273,848,434. On the combined statement of revenue expenditures and changes in fund balance for June 30, 2023, if you look at the column fourth over, 6/30/2023, our total revenues is $52,961,590. Our total expenditures, $55,305,282. And our fund balance is $55,543,830. And our combined statement of revenue expenditures and changes in fund balance for our trust funds, our total operating revenues for the year is $23,733,675. Our operating income is $14,186,994. And our total fund balance as of June 30 is $239,135,690 for all of our trust fund balances. Our contribution report for May and June totals $15,120, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Amanda, what was that 10th, I'm sorry, it came off the screen. I didn't look at my package yet. What's the $10,000? Okay. That was from the city of Grove?
That was for that tiger bass fish stocking.
Okay. Thank you.
When do we expect to have any results on the tiger bass stocking? When will we start getting some of the, when will we expect the?
Yeah, so I'll see if Richard wants to clean anything up after I say it, but it's my understanding it's a 10-year research project with the idea that about after 10 years of this supplemental stocking and introducing this genetics, you know, seeing how it works its way through the gene pool and what kind of impact it may have on sizes, it'll take about 10 years to roughly to be able to start realizing that.
Yeah, we'll start looking at the genetics here 3 years in. You know, those samples will be moderate because we know that the stretch of those alleles hadn't made it through the population yet. But as time increases, we should see that increase. So we hope to follow it through time. And if we ultimately don't see it, then ultimately it's just not going to work for us. That latitude where that lake sits is just too far northeast, and just temperature gradient won't allow the fish to survive.
We're going to work a lot better in southwest Oklahoma, so.
Southwest is one of the areas within the state that we do stock several Florida largemouth bass lakes in that area.
Questions for Amanda? Thank you. Thanks, man.
Do we have a motion for exit? Any questions or conversation? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye.
Commissioner Deal?
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Zelps?
Aye.
Commissioner Dillingham? Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. Thank you, Amanda. And we've got Nils.
Commissioners, some of you will have actually seen a couple updates on ranges now, but I wanted to provide a little bit of a background for kind of how we got here.
You just have to back it off, so it's hot.
I'll start with the money, right? It's always about the money. Pittman Roberts Funds, known as Wildlife Restoration, the wildlife restoration grant funds. Well, those come from a federal excise tax on firearms, ammunition, and hunting equipment. And it's worth noting about 2/3 of those dollars are coming exclusively from recreational shooters. And the total amount of those dollars saw a dramatic spike about 15 years ago. There were several high-profile national events that took place, presidential election, and it led to a pretty good proliferation of the total amount of those funds. And while they have slid back a little bit from the historic levels, it's important to note that there's still a lot of money coming in through the PR and from recreational shooters in particular. So our department has historically had about a dozen shooting ranges, and 7-8 years ago, the agency began the process of renovating those existing ranges. Lance Meek is our senior C&E specialist and hunter education coordinator, and he was volunteered to take on the task of those renovations. Subsequent to that, several other grants were put in place that would call for the construction of new ranges. So that brought the total number of projects on the books, so to speak, to 23. And Lance did yeoman's work pulling double duty, essentially, but it became clear to the department that additional capacity was needed if we were ever going to make significant strides towards completing these projects. And a few years back, the department added an FTE that was half shooting range coordinator, half boating access coordinator. Some of you may even remember the person, Nick, gave a presentation up at Miami, up at the Coleman Theater meeting on this very topic. Well, Nick has moved on from the department, but at that time, Fisheries was committed to boating access projects, and in particular, they reallocated an existing FTE to boating access, which left the shooting range boating access coordinator to just focus on shooting ranges. And last December, C&E hired the first dedicated shooting range coordinator in Amanda Thomas. I'll tell you a little bit about Amanda. She began her career with the department in 2012 as a grants assistant in federal aid, and she worked there for 7 years before moving to accounting, where she did serve as the department's P-card administrator. So being familiar with the grants process, tracking, reporting, and compliance will be huge assets in this position. She also brings a lot of valuable experience, and even having served in construction back in the day. So she's an avid duck hunter, deer, dove, quail, loves to fish, loves hunting dogs, and all of her skills and strengths will be a tremendous benefit as we move forward with the range renovations and new range projects. I would say this, it definitely feels like we drew an ace out of the deck when we got Amanda. So, Amanda.
Thanks, Snails. Should just start? Yeah. Oh, that was a long wait. I'm kicking off with a comprehensive overview of all of our shooting range projects to date. With these first 6 existing WMA shooting ranges, we have successfully renovated 7 shooting ranges, one being third-party equipment upgrade for Silverleaf out in Guthrie, Oklahoma, and then 8 brand new shooting ranges. OPSU, Pack Saddle WMA, and CAW WMA have all completed the construction phase, and then the remaining 5 ranges are either in the planning or construction phase that I'll go into a little more detail throughout this presentation. I wanted to give a quick overview of the WMA shooting ranges on our website. We've got 14 WMA ranges currently, and just out of this pick, I'm going to highlight the 2 most recent completions this year, CAW WMA and Pack Saddle WMA. So if you were to click on Pack Saddle WMA here on the shooting range website,
We now, with the help of Kara, our new webmaster, have inserted photos of the shooting ranges, features, coordinates, directions, and then a link to the department shooting range rules. Before, some of this information was on there, some of it wasn't. There were not pictures, so we thought this was a great addition. A lot of the drone shots that you see throughout the presentation are from Darren Hill, our C&E specialist, so thankful that he could go out and take these photos for us to highlight. This is a view which most of you probably saw on the ribbon cutting invitation. We're going to provide updates along the way for construction projects from here on out, and this is just a highlight of call, which is not officially open yet, and just a warning showing that the use of the range is prohibited during construction, but we wanted to provide the public updates and just kind of a live feed of what's to come. Switching over to Pack Saddle WMA, the first range to be officially completed under my term, I guess you could say. Open to the public as of June 26th. It aired on Outdoor Oklahoma on July 2nd, and we held a ribbon cutting ceremony on July 18th. Again, another nice drone shot from Darren Hill down there on the right. And this is a view of the 100-yard rifle range with 5 covered shooting benches and then the targets downrange. Switching over to the shotgun range, we have switched to an abbreviated trap pad that we're actually going to incorporate on all of the ranges from here on out. Subject to change, but as of right now, that's what we're doing. Noteworthy here, Marcus Thibodeau, the senior biologist out at Pack Saddle WMA, is holding an open house family event here at the shooting range, so that'll be his first event there since this range opened, and he will have the shotgun trailer out there and letting families come shoot, showing them lots of different wing shooting techniques. So I thought that was worthy of stating. This is just a view of the crowd. We had about 40 in attendance, including wildlife commissioners, ODWC leadership, Wildlife Foundation, Beckham County 4-H shooting team, the Ellis County Sheriff's Office, Oklahoma legislators from even way out in the Panhandle. That is Marcus, beside me on the left there, 2 in from the left. If you guys haven't met him, he's the area biologist out there. I can't thank him and Adam and their interns enough for keeping that thing clean. It's not, when it's completed, it is not completed. There's ongoing maintenance. We're already talking about expanding it, fixing a few things. They all have to build those target frames when the range is done, so it's truly a team effort from here on out. Now, switching over to call, that first photo on the top left was taken in early February. We met out there right before construction kicked off, so construction kicked off mid-February, so just in a matter of February, March, April, 4 months. The bottom left is what that looked like. I wanted to put into perspective the amount of dirt work involved. That is about 20,000 cubic yards or 5,500 tons of dirt that stayed on site here. So they cut and built those berms all from the dirt there on site. As JD mentioned, we have the ribbon cutting set for September 14th. Hopefully several of you can make it out to that. Here's just another shot of the West Rifle Range that has full ADA access out to the 100-yard target. And then a shot of the pistol range. Here's a shot of the archery tower with 4 shooting lanes, which is ended up being really awesome because they're going to be shooting. They'll be able to set targets up and give like a realistic shot into the trees. Probably a pretty far shot. I think we determined that was like 40 or 50 yards, but still a pretty neat feature. And Outdoor Oklahoma aired yesterday opening and closing segments featuring the first WMA archery tower. So that was pretty cool to see. There's another aerial view with lots of workers this day. This was July 31st. We were setting the archery platform there in the middle. And then just another aerial shot to show you the whole range. We've got 2 100-yard rifle ranges. The middle one is ADA accessible out to the 100-yard target, and then the pistol range is also ADA accessible out to the 30-yard target, and then the archery tower at the bottom left. I'll take a moment here just to give some shout outs to Joey, the local area biologist at Call WMA. Has a pointer, I feel good. So he is on the archery platform. This was just a busy day altogether. He was setting the flags for the target frames. We can't officially put those in until construction is complete, but up in the far right, you'll see Zach and the interns putting up the fencing. So lots going on there. And again, it all happens with teamwork and never ends. Switching over to, this is just a summary of the shooting range projects completed to date. This is 10 ranges with 2 third-party. We have spent a total of $1.8 million on 6 WMA renovations, $1.6 million on 2 brand new ranges, which just completed this year, which comes to $3.4 million total on WMA ranges, and then $2.8 million total on third-party range projects, which the majority of that, $2.5 million, was for OPSU. Overall, that comes to about $6.2 million, and I think the eye-opening fact here is the $3.4 million on total WMA ranges. Over about 7 years is almost the same amount that we were given by the commission and leadership just for this year's projects alone. Excuse me. So I just think this shows the seriousness and commitment to provide our hunters and recreational shooters more places to shoot. So thank you for giving me lots to do. That budget includes 21 projects, which is 6 as-builts, a permitting application, environmental assessments, some engineering projects, and 3 construction projects. One of those is just a major repair. And I will briefly go over all those. As-builts, we're already underway. We have completed 2 of the 6 as-builts. This is where we've contracted with Garver to go out and survey all of the renovated ranges. We've got, over the last 5 to 7 years, as you can see in the photos to the left, we've got some major issues to resolve. So they're going to survey the properties, give us some drainage recommendations, berms and backstops, repair recommendations, and any other improvements that we want to make. They're actually at Lexington today, and then Pushmataha later this week, and then James Collins and Okmulgee will be on into September, but we have completed Beaver and Cherokee this far. Environmental assessment. It's a required study to identify and evaluate economic, environment, and social impacts, in my case, on shooting ranges. And you go through this 12-month process to determine any issues that may come about, with the hope of receiving what they call a FONSI, finding of no significant impact, which is what you need in order for the Fish and Wildlife Service to approve it for construction. The average cost of these A's is running about $100,000, and unfortunately they take about 12 months to complete with no issues. So we've got, I think, 6 EA projects that we're kicking off right now. Engineering is the next step.
We've got issues coming up.
I'm not aware of any so far.
Yeah, we have.
Oh, I'm sorry. That is right. There was lots of conflict. OSU at Lake Carl Blackwell wanted to put a shooting range there, and ultimately decided to stop working. I don't know if they're still looking at other sites or not.
We mixed it
Yeah.
for now.
So after environmental assessment, and sometimes simultaneously, we can start engineering if we feel pretty good, especially about the renovation projects. It's an important planning phase that includes like topo surveys, so we're getting elevations, drainage, you know, all the survey information, soil testing, engineering design for each project, project cost estimates, bidding support, and construction phase services from the engineering company. The average cost for engineering plans is also about $100,000 per site and takes about 6 months to complete if no issues or changes. So now I'm just going to go into each project. Fort Supply, we're completing, or hopefully completing, an environmental assessment. As we look at all the EAs, note we've got rifle, pistol, shotgun, and archery. As of right now, we don't have intentions of putting in an archery range, but for these EAs, you want to encompass everything possible so that you don't have to redo the EA if they come back in 5 or 10 or 20 years and decide, oh, we want a shotgun range, or oh, we want a 400-yard range. So we're going to cover that all at the beginning. Fort Gibson is also receiving an environmental assessment, and same thing, rifle, pistol, shotgun, and archery. Canton WMA, we are completing the environmental assessment and doing the engineering plans this year for rifle, pistol, shotgun, and archery. So PAN has actually gone past the EA. We received the FONSI for construction. We do have to get a Corps permit for the little, see that black arrow, there's a little like half-acre wetland area, so we have to apply with the Corps for a permit to place fill material in there and cover up that wetland unit. And then if it moves to construction, we'll actually have to do a wetland mitigation and create another wetland on the WMA because we are covering up or doing away with this wetland. So we're working on engineering plans for Copan, for rifle, pistol, and archery. This one was already past the EA process and did not encompass the shotgun range. So we are just moving forward with rifle, pistol, and archery here. Optimal, we are working on engineering plans currently for renovation of the rifle and pistol range. We're hoping to get that out to bid before the end of the year and start construction early 2024. We did receive $25,000 in match funding from a grant with NRA to go towards construction. And then Atoka, we are finalizing engineering plans right now. Hopefully we'll get those done before the end of the month and get it out for bid next month. We are putting in an archery, pistol, rifle, and shotgun range here. If we do get it out for bid and are pleased with the bids, hopefully construction will start this fall and completion will be in the spring of next year. This photo down to the left is just that's the access road leading to the range, so back in the trees is where the range will actually sit. Side note, this one is eligible for the new 9010 target range funding, and I will circle back to that after a couple of these other projects. Arcadia Archery Park, also eligible for the new 9010 target range funding, planning grant to start September 1st. This project is actually led by C&E specialist Jason Smith, who is over the grounds at Arcadia. He's going to be working on environmental assessment and engineering plans for archery range and various other archery courses, as well as parking lots, ADA accessibility, and a building out there, I think for storage and possibly some offices. Note that Rick did say they provided the $20,000 towards match for the planning of this archery park. And then the only third-party project that we funded this year is with the city of Altus, who is looking to build a world-class shooting sports complex. Picture to the right there, just that's a rendition and some early engineering plans. We kicked off a public forum in May. The planning grant was approved July 10th, and update federal aid and I worked together on the draft cooperative agreement last week and got it sent to them on Wednesday, I believe. So we're waiting for their city attorney to review it and hit us back with any questions they might have. And then we'll get that cooperative agreement executed and move on with the environmental assessment. Circling back to the 90-10 funds, these 3 projects, all A's, Atoka, Altus, and Arcadia, were the 3 projects eligible for the 90-10 funding, which means that the states are reimbursed for up to 90% of the cost for planning and construction of new shooting ranges or expanded shooting ranges. And those funds, as Nels described, they come from wildlife restoration account. We move those over to this public target range account, and that amount of money can be obligated to specific project awards for up to 5 years. Circling back to the budget with those 3 projects, I thought it was worthy of noting that we would, under the 75-25 cost share, we would be paying almost $500,000 for Atoka. The city of Altus would have to pay $60,000 towards planning, and we would have to pay $50,000 towards the planning at Arcadia. So pretty big difference there. Other projects that I will be working on, site visits, reviewing layouts, preparing scopes of work, getting them in line for hopefully the next year projects list, which includes EAs and engineering. So we can't do them all at once, but that's the list. All these sites are in grants currently, and we will move forward with them as time and funding allows. Aside from that, I am continuously working on a third-party application program and resources for third parties. Hopefully get those on the website and announce that. Reviewing lead management plans and lead reclamation schedules, and putting out some guidelines for the annual inspections for all ranges. Just a summary. There's lots more going on, but that's all I have. Any questions?
I've got one, man. That's a lot of work. You're busy.
My mouth is dry.
Yeah, I bet. One thing Commissioner Barwick and I have talked about in the past is signage. And, there is a lot of work that's gone on there that you're continuously doing, but even social media posts. I mean, I live in Okmulgee, and we have one there in Okmulgee, and I've been out there. But, unless you drive past Okmulgee Lake, you wouldn't ever know it was there. And it's not a real well-traveled highway, but, even some social media posts, I think, would be, would go a long way in getting people to know that these are out there for the public to use. So.
I think Sarah left, but she has done a couple on Pack Saddle, for instance, when we opened it up. Sorry. And we actually have a division meeting this afternoon. We can maybe talk about it as a group and see if we can highlight these ranges a little more. I know, is there a sign at the road at Okmulgee?
It's at the road, but unless you live out that way, which not many do, you're not going out that way.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know there's some work happening on new signage with the new brand and look and everything that are just kind of slowly rolling out. But Nels, you want to cover that?
Appreciate the question. I'll also point out Kelly Adams is spearheading with Wildlife's cooperation an access communication priority, which a big chunk of that is going to feature the shooting ranges. So she's got a whole cadre of different, basically outreach and communication plans that will center around public hunting and public recreational shooting access for people. So you'll be seeing that.
Did we ever do new signs out at the Panhandle State Complex?
Yeah, Lance was able to secure a commitment from them, and they delivered on some new signage. They did explain that they have been having problems with big signs getting ripped out of the ground, 70-mile-an-hour winds.
On the highway, so you know where to go.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear back from him on that, yeah.
Right across the road, or the highway from the main entrance into Panhandle State is where you go, but there's no sign there.
Yeah, they were aware, and Lance has been trying to help them with securing
All right, I'll circle back.
some ODOT assistance in that one regard.
Good work. Good job.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. So next item, Bill, oh, wait a minute. Bill, that's right, I'm sorry. Yep. I got lost there on my.
Thought maybe we were taking a lunch break now or something.
I know,
I
wow.
don't know where we're going.
Oh, but keep it in mind.
Yeah, so, good point. Well, I'm gonna set it up, and you'll see several people on the agenda, and there's a reason for that. You know, in '21, some of you remember I came to you and presented on WMA planning and modernization. And just to recap real quick that, you know, the strategic plan had 4 main goals with several objectives and many more strategies. And strategy 4, you may recall, was preparation of management plans. I reported back then the written plans were completed in phase 1. Phase 2 was creating the GIS layer and dashboard, which we're going to hear about an update today. Just a quick note, you know, just to recall the original team, I was put in charge of leading, but I created a team of biologists from every region, including supervisors and GIS staff, because we wanted to build the planning app, if you will, from the ground up. We wanted it to be useful to our staff to help them do their jobs. So I want to acknowledge all the effort and time and energy they put into it, and quite honestly, it's been a grind, you know, but we're getting close. I started the process as assistant chief, and I'm passing the baton to my assistant chief, Russ Horton. Come on up, Russ, who's going to kick it off and show us some things.
So, collective groan and the remarks about lunchtime when you saw Russ on the agenda, but we'll try to get through this fairly quick. So, in 4 parts, how we got here, what is GIS, how do we use GIS, and then where do we go from here? So we'll have help from David and Scott as we move through this, but real quick, how we got here. Initially, our public hunting areas, I define them as management by monarch. Some of the very first ones that we got were actually refuges for some of our restoration efforts, deer restoration efforts. Some of them you may still find a game refuge sign on the fence occasionally. Spavinaw, Cooks, and Push, the wilderness area were some of those type areas. And then as we continued to expand more of a public hunting area, and a lot of those actually had a game management area portion and a public hunting area portion. The public hunting area basically same as statewide season. The game management area a little bit more restrictive regulations to try to get more involved in specific management, quality deer, etc. Of note, the habitat on those early WMAs, typically it was exactly what you'd find for miles around. They were just basically a place to go, a public hunting area. And at that point in time, we were typically 1 manager per WMA. And the management by monarch, essentially that manager, he had full control of the WMA, the decisions that were made on the WMA, how the budget was spent, et cetera. But time passes. And so with the passing of time, our WMAs, they became increasingly isolated or fragmented. The habitat around them, now they're starting to become more islands of good quality habitat surrounded by other things, housing developments, ranchettes, improved pasture, et cetera. And so we're starting to see a change there. And as we got more WMAs, we didn't get FTEs to go with them, so we start seeing our WMA biologists responsible for more than 1 WMA. So we're starting to get our time and our resources split up. They did become actually wildlife management areas, not less of the game component, but actually acknowledgement of the wildlife diversity component. It's not just deer, quail, and turkey and waterfowl.
It's the whole wildlife community, and more emphasis on recognizing that and acknowledging that in our management. Also increasing demands from our constituents. They continue to get busy. The control hunts, a lot of the control hunts, that's where they came about. As the demand was more than the resource could handle, we had to limit those numbers. And so we're dealing with that. I don't have to tell the commission we're dealing with limited resources. We've done an amazing job of doing more with less or more with the same amount, and so that has evolved. So now we get to basically, and this started actually with Richard Hatcher when Richard was the chief of Wildlife Division, the need for a real-time or near real-time interactive plan. Richard said, I'd like to be able to get on my computer. No, when I started, we didn't even have computers in Wildlife Division. It was a word processing machine on the secretary's desk. Said, I'd like to get on my computer and be able to see, when was this food plot on WMA XYZ planted? What was it planted to? And so that was far enough back that it's like, Richard, that at this point is a pipe dream, but the capability is coming online to get there, and GIS is how we get there. And so that brings us to the GIS component. As Bill said, the strategic plan, the inventory of habitat improvement and infrastructure needs through preparation of management plans. The first phase was the written management plans, but anything written, very quickly after the ink dries, it becomes obsolete, something changes. And so we go with a computer-based plan. It's interactive, we're able to update and keep it current. Phase 2, and that's basically where we've gotten to at this point, is the GIS, the dashboard component. And then phase 3 going forward is interactive, objective and goal-based, monitored, adaptable, and accessible wildlife management plans. And so that is the direction of the future, real-time or near real-time ability with the GIS to do a lot more monitoring, which has been one of the weak points of our WMAs. We do things, we have a reason why we do them, but we never go back really and spend time monitoring, are we accomplishing what we wanted to accomplish. So going forward, just a simple plan, do, learn model. You plan based on what you know, you implement your plan, you monitor, you evaluate, you analyze the results of what you've done, you learn from that, you go back, you plan again, and so it's just an infinite loop, if you will. So that's kind of how we got here and where we're at. I'm going to bring up David Murray to take us through what GIS is, and then Scott Perry on how we'll use GIS.
All right, so what is a GIS? Geographic Information System is a framework for gathering and analyzing spatial and temporal data, and then displaying any of the gleaned knowledge that's developed inside it in a graphical or textual format. WILMA, the Wildlife Information Land Management Application, is the staff interface built with GIS to access the proverbial one-stop shop for our WMA management practices and inventories. The information collected represents real-world objects and actions. So, signs, buildings, and campgrounds are collected as points, roads and fences are collected as lines, and anything that requires or represents an area is collected as a polygon. And then the records of any repetitive management activities are saved and associated with their appropriate object. WILMA was initially based on the information required for reporting to the federal government, and then we sort of built on it from there. It was a handy chart, very confusing. Oh.
Well, is it a federal, who's managing this WILMA? Is it a federal site?
No, it's ours.
Okay.
It's our invention. Yeah. Okay.
So, the data inside it gets we collect it in the field, with a mobile application, or we can edit it in the office using a desktop application. The data in the system gets sort of updated, refreshed regularly across the entire network. The mobile application is based on Esri's field maps and allows data to be collected in the field and away from internet access. And then once you return to the office with internet access again, you can re-upload your field changes to the system in general. Three various examples of the field maps in operation. The information itself is collected and compiled for agency use. It can be filtered and focused for statistical use, or it can be used to generate public-facing maps for our constituents. Turn over to Scott.
Thank you there, David. It's important to note, and Bill kind of indicated it earlier, but the amount of effort that our WMA folks have put into building this data. All this data that we're talking about, somebody had to enter it in there. And it's typically either our GIS guys or most of the time it's going to be the folks actually out there on the ground doing the work. So it can't be overstated. That's one of them other duties as assigned kind of things. When most of our biologists hired on to run the area, we didn't even know how to spell GIS. And so here we are asking these guys to put in all this information, and so again, that just can't be overstated. And with that in mind, how we use this information is pretty important. First and foremost, and I've always talked to Bill and Russ about this, it has to be information that is usable and beneficial to our area managers. Most important. Don't care what else we do with it, but if it's not beneficial and usable to them, then they're not going to support the program, and it's not going to go anywhere. So that's really critical. And one of the recent examples that come up when we was fixing to transition into the new federal aid grant, it started at July 1. The Fish and Wildlife Service had recently listed tricolored bat. I don't know much about a tricolored bat, honestly. I don't remember that long ago in college when we learned about bats and all that good stuff. But one thing, they do tend to roost and raise their pups under loose tree bark of mature trees. They're not real selective what tree that is. So Fish and Wildlife Service goes to our diversity shop there to talk to them about, we have concerns about removing trees from May 15th to August 15th on your WMAs because that could impact the tricolored bat. And since they're not real tree selective, that would be any tree. And so Kurt Kuklinski, he called me and we was talking about it, and I said, does that include eastern red cedar? And he said, yes. And I said, man, you're killing us. You know, we can't knock cedar trees for 4 months out of the year. You know, that's pretty important. And he said, well, how many cedar trees do you guys cut anyways? And I'm northwest Oklahoma, and so to me, I'm like, I don't care, but we're gonna cut cedars all we can, you know. And he says, well, you know, and then I thought, well, you know, we've been building this data in here for a long time, and so I just went into our planning application, which is where we put the information in. I knew most of the biologists by that point had entered recent management activities, so I looked at last year, 2022. And I just pull up real quickly. You can add a few filters in there. You can say, I don't know how this pointer works, but we'll try that. Yeah, there we go. So habitat management, we can filter out. The next thing is the management activities. So there's like cedar cutting, mulching, mastication. I selected all those. We're not interested in herbicide or any of that kind of stuff on this particular exercise. And then filter down a date, January of 2022 to December of 2022. And then you can just pull up the stats real quick, and I can't see the numbers from here, but I think it's 2,800, something like that. 1,200 acres of cedars cut last year, statewide. So, okay. Now, how many acres do we cut from May 15th to August 15th? And that number drops substantially. Most of our cedar cutting activities, it turns out, happens earlier in the year, before we get, usually it's about now we're setting up contracts, and then we got hunting season coming on, and then about January, February is when we turn them guys loose to go get the work done. So, I don't know, again, I can't quite say that number from here. I apologize for that slide being so fuzzy, but I think it was a couple of hundred, yeah, okay, 330 or something like that. And then I thought, well, I really am interested in cedars in northwest Oklahoma, because that's where it's most important to me. So I said, man, let's filter it on down to northwest region. And I think there's 20 or 30 acres or something like that, but there's two different projects there, and dug a little deeper into one of them, and it actually wasn't a cedar cutting project. So we only cut 6.6 acres of eastern red cedar in northwest Oklahoma between May 15th and August 15th. So in about the amount of time I just sit here and explain this to you, I was able to do that and call Kurt back and go, yeah, we're good, go with it, you know. So just one use that was really helpful, because I mean, I was like, we can't do this, you know. And then when you actually look at the information, because it's put in there, it's as David indicated, it's spatial and time, and so it's this spot and when we did it, and so then you can start filtering out when we did what activities where, and get some pretty good information back pretty quick. Another exercise that we could use, just real quick, on our dashboard, we have a fence line reporting system there, statewide, 2,200 miles of fence or something like that, a little shy of 2,500 miles. If you filter that down, let's say southeast region, for example, just a little under 500 miles of fence. And if you just select a random WMA in southeast region, like maybe Pushmataha, we can see that we got 28 miles of fence on that particular WMA. And so if the question were to come up, what would it take to replace fence for some unknown reason, we can real quickly go, well, we got 28 miles, we know it costs X number per mile, and there you are. So anyways, another neat use, and something that can be pretty beneficial. This map is, it's a map I've waited about 10 plus years to see. This is why I even started looking at GIS to begin with. Many years ago, I was area manager out at Pack Saddle WMA, and we was doing rotational prescribed fire pretty regular. I knew that there was a way to put that information in a system and then do some analysis on it to get some information back. But that's all I really knew. And so I asked around a few guys that knew a little more about GIS. Like I said, I couldn't even spell GIS then. And they said, yeah, you know, you get into this ArcView program, which is Esri, and you draw these polygons and do all this stuff. And so I started doing that back early, mid-2000s, somewhere in that time frame, and continued doing it. And the thing is, I wasn't smart enough to know how to get any analysis back out of it. And so about a month ago, talking to David on the phone, and in a meeting with David and Russ and Bill, and we're just talking, and I mentioned, well, you know, the whole reason I started this stuff was I wanted to generate a map that would show me as the area manager where I'm missing the boat. I mean, I got a feeling that I know that really rough country down on the southern portion, it's a little tougher to burn. But yeah, so I got a feeling, but I want to visually see where we're doing good or getting a lot of burn rotations in, and where we need to focus some more effort. And so in about that same amount of time, David popped this map up and said, you mean like this? I said, man, I waited 10 years to see this thing, you know. He did it in 2 minutes, and it's unbelievable. This is the coolest map ever. So just real quick, the lighter color is less frequency of burns. The darker red color is more frequent. If you notice, there's a little anomaly, just one little strip there that's a little darker, and all the rest of them kind of almost dead center of the WMA as far as how it lays there. it's probably the idiot that was drawing the polygons in there, didn't get them all exactly right, which would have been me, but I also know that we removed the fence line right there at one point in time, and so our fire guard probably changed a little bit, and it may truly have been more burn repetitions right there in that little strip. But anyway, cool map. I could talk about this map for a long time, but I'll spare you anymore. And then, so that was pretty much internal kind of stuff. This is more going out to the public. So our new dove hunting map, it's live on our website now. So you can go to our website and go to this map, start zooming in areas, and you can see food plots or windmills or whatever dove type management activities on various WMAs. And anyway, I think with that, we'll go back to David, I believe, so.
Yeah, that one takes the Wilma data that's entered live by the folks in the field and reprojects it and kind of filters it down for public use. Okay, so as for the rest of the public-facing maps, we have several on our website, but we take the same information that we use for our internal analyses and filter it, redeploy it for our constituents' use. This is the public-facing wildlife management area map. It can be accessed by our constituents to see what features and habitat types are available within a particular WMA. You can also use a little print widget to print off a map that you have customized with scribbles or notes and print off that map and use it in the field. Got our viewership for said map. You can see that there's a overall rise in views during hunter season. During that one particular day, there were 1,300 views. This is the public-facing Oklahoma Lands Access Program map, which allows constituents to see what areas are open and details about a particular OLAP property. There is a similar rise in OLAP views during hunting season. Our public-facing fish attractors map shows the location of sunken fish habitat structures, and constituent views are pretty consistent throughout the year, although there are a number of spikes which seem to coincide with crappie tournaments and with a publication of some particularly popular articles by a radio station out of Lawton that linked our website to their news, to their articles. Yeah, so crappie, spike, spike, spike. Fish articles, spike, spike. Back to go from here.
So as you can see, we've come a long ways with this GIS. Basically, once you've got the data entered, the sky's the limit really to what you can do with it. So where do we go from here? Able to get a lot more prescriptive with our wildlife management plans, and then collect that data. And a lot of the monitoring that we need to do is just like you saw with that pack saddle map. You know, we know what we need. We tell David what we need, and wham. You know, a lot of times, literally, it's that quick. You saw with that map the level of precision you can get, as Scott alluded. The data that you put in, if you can get precise enough with your data, you can get very precise with that analysis. So that allows us then to refine our goals. We quantify those goals with metrics. How are we going to measure those goals? What represents success? What are we trying to accomplish? And then we tie those management practices to population, density surveys, hunter surveys, things like that. We find out, are we doing what we want to be doing? If we're not, that's when we go back. What do we need to change? Let's look at this. Evaluate those management practices. If we're burning, what do we want to get out of that burn? We want more forbs, we can go back and measure the forb response to that. if we're not getting it, or if we find a spot on Pack Saddle that this is what we want it to look like. We go back to Scott's map, bang. Every 4 years, we've burnt this area, you know, twice in the last 8 years. Maybe look at a 4-year burn rotation so we can get more specific with that. Monitor those changes over time. We can analyze. We can also pull in a lot of external data sets. Look at the response based on weather type parameters. Bring in data from the mesonet, hunter use surveys, you know, harvest data, and so ultimately that allows us to get much more strategic and precise with our WMA planning, our WMA budgeting, and make sure that we're utilizing the limited resources we have in the most effective manner and in a way that will meet our constituent and our resource needs. Just real quick, you can go on the Apple Store or Google Play if you're savvy enough to do things like that, which I'm not, but I've got some teenage kids that can help with that. You can pull up the OLAP web map viewer. You can pull up our WMA viewer. Also, fisheries is taking advantage of use of our GIS program, lake level, stream flow conditions. So with that, I'd ask if there's any questions.
I might just throw in there real quick too. First of all, great work. I know it's been many years of grinding this out, and now it's come to fruition, and it's going to be amazing to be able to just call up information we need at our fingertips, whether you're Scott out there on the ground trying to figure out how to best manage the WMA areas, or we're sitting in a finance committee meeting, which we're going to be doing after this commission meeting, and helping, you know, working with wildlife or fisheries division to pull together where the infrastructure needs are and how to prioritize those across the state too. So I think that's a point that might be particularly important around this horseshoe, that our ability to pull data and information together and prioritize needs from a budget perspective just advanced into a whole nother millennia based on the work that these folks have done. So good work.
Ditto that, yeah. Thank you, thank you.
No, we're not putting radio collared quail on there.
Not on the public face.
Not on the public, yeah. It's just the commissioner.
Proceed.
Next up.
Looks like one more. Well, just a quick recap, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jerry Shaw, our program supervisor. You know, the commission approved our chronic wasting disease response strategy back in 2019. And y'all, or some of you will recall, October 22 commission meeting we had at Medicine Park. We came to you because of a deer in Texas that was within 5 miles, which basically triggered an in-state response. Well, unfortunately today, now we're here to talk about a couple of detections of free-ranging deer that we've actually found in Oklahoma. One in Texas County and one in Woodward County. So Jerry has a presentation for us, and then we'll be glad to answer any questions following the presentation.
I would say good morning, but I'm not sure if we're in the afternoon yet. Appreciate the patience, and I'll try to be as brief and concise as possible. First, I owe it to Dallas Barber, over there, sorry, he moved on me. He's our big game biologist, our big game coordinator, and it was him and Emily that have really been doing the heavy lifting on this. I stepped in. Dallas is a brand new dad as of a few weeks, so we weren't sure kind of how due dates were going to work, so I was pitch hitting, but got a happy and healthy new baby, so he's here to help out today. Jumping right in again. Throughout this presentation, you'll be hearing me talk about CWD. CWD is just the acronym. Biologists, we love acronyms. It's just the acronym for chronic wasting disease. As we've discussed before, you guys have seen me talk about this disease often. It's a prion disease, which a prion is a protein that helps in the transmission of neurosignals. This protein somehow, and they don't know the mechanism, that's where the science is lacking, somehow this protein misfolds. It gets shaped in a different way. And in that misshapen form, when it becomes close to other prions, it alters their shape as well. If you get enough of those misshapen prions in the nervous system, it interrupts the flow of nervous signals. Mainly impacts the brain, where it will form basically just vacuums or holes. The disease is a member of a class of diseases called a spongiform encephalopathy. Just means it makes the brain like a sponge. We've all seen sponges. They work because they have holes throughout the structure. Encephalopathy, it's just relating to the head. So spongiform encephalopathy. Things like mad cow disease, Kuru in humans. There's a form of encephalitis in squirrels. So this is one that impacts our cervids. In Oklahoma, our cervids that we are concerned with are mule deer, white-tailed deer, and our elk. It is not transmissible, according to science. It is not transmissible to humans, non-transmissible to livestock, non-transmissible to the panhandle. So we're really focused here on the cervids today.
You mean pronghorn?
Pronghorn, what do I?
The panhandle.
Yeah, because we have it in the panhandle, pronghorn was something that I absolutely had to worry about. Thanks, boss. My brain outruns my mouth by a long distance these days. As you'll see here, as Bill has discussed, we passed our chronic wasting disease, brought it before the commission back in the fall of 2019. That was about 20 years into my career, I had been working for that. So I was very grateful for the commission to view the plan and then pass it through. You'll see ODAF mentioned often in this presentation, and that's our partners over in the Department of Agriculture, Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. They govern the captive cervid industry side of things, where we have the free-range wildlife things. So we had a joint plan because we shared jurisdiction over the cervids in the state. We had a joint plan. Our CWD plan lined out the response to this disease being detected in or adjacent to our state. In that plan, we have some broad overreaching goals. The first is just applying sound science and management practices to protect the free-ranging and captive cervids from CWD while minimizing negative impacts to stakeholders. Prevention and further incidence and spread of the CWD and free-range and captive cervids in Oklahoma. It's important to note that we don't have any belief that we're going to stop this disease. It's like trying to stop the flu. You don't stop the flu, you try to minimize the people that are impacted with it. So we're trying to slow the spread, not eradicate the disease. We want to be able to detect CWD in free range and captive cervids if present. We want to monitor for the prevalence, distribution, and disease-caused mortality of or by CWD in a population. That is where this disease becomes deer management. As a wildlife department, as a deer guy, I'm not concerned about disease management, I'm concerned about deer management. How does that disease impact our deer, and what can we do to minimize that? We want to look for the origin of any CWD positive cervid so we can kind of get an idea about where it came from, so we know where we need to be looking a little bit closer. Lastly, our goal is to provide current relevant information to stakeholders concerning CWD. So I'll blast through this real quick because Bill covered it pretty well. September of 22, Texas Parks and Wildlife notified us of a positive just a couple of miles south of our border in Cimarron County. So that triggered the plan. Within 5 miles of our border, if there's a positive, that triggered our plan. So this was the first instance of our plan being put into place. So we go to our plan and start thinking, how are we going to respond? Well, page 6 of our joint CWD response strategy tells us that the response to detecting CWD should be in proportion to the health risks and economic impact imposed by this disease. Many of the commissioners are probably aware of some of the CWD actions taken by other states in the past, going in and eradicating deer, attempting to eradicate deer over a large swath of ground. That is not what we're interested in. That is not where the science is. That is not in proportion to the health risk or the economic impact. So that's important for us, and we said, all right, with that in mind, how do we go forward? So in that, we came up with our management actions. We presented those to the commission last year in Medicine Park for that session to ask for emergency rules. This was after we had our positive in the Panhandle. Great support from commission, appreciate that greatly. It passed unanimously. The emergency rule change went to the governor and was signed, and it was made a permanent rule earlier this year. So what did that action, what did we actually get approved? The rules that were approved allowed for the creation of what we call a selective surveillance area, or SSA, going forward. That is just an area in which we're looking for the disease a little bit closer. The emergency rule also established rules to limit the carcass movement of carcasses and carcass parts out of that SSA. That is just an attempt to keep those most infectious materials where they're already located. We realize that deer can move, and we can't avoid that. Deer have the ability to spread the disease. What we're trying to do with those regulations is stop the spread of the disease in the back of a pickup truck. If you take an infected deer and drive across the state and put the remains of the carcass out on your back 40, we've now potentially created a new CWD hotspot. So we passed those rules to kind of limit the movement of those infectious materials. The rule as passed basically says you can't transport any cervid or parts out of an SSA unless it is antlers detached from the skull plate and cleaned of infectious tissue, animal quarters that don't contain the spinal materials, cleaned teeth, finished taxidermy parts, or hides and tan products. And this is kind of a universal list across the nation. It's AFWA, our partner organization that we're a member of. It's their guidelines. Texas, Kansas, other states have this, and those rules were actually in place statewide for importation from other states that were CWD positive. So that wasn't the first time that we've limited what can be brought in from CWD impacted areas. So the results of that commission meeting and the results of the rules that were passed were we were able to place and enforce that SSA for the 2022 season. This is a map showing where that SSA was established. The red line there is a surveillance area. The crosshair with the deer in it was our focal point. That was where we first identified our initial case in Texas. And then we established a voluntary drop-off location. The entirety of that county shoots about 100 deer a year. Most of that deer harvest occurs along the river in the northern portion of that county. So this was a real good opportunity for us to dip our toe into the CWD waters. What it amounted to was really just business as usual for our hunters. We didn't receive any complaints. It didn't seem to be any issues. In fact, most people that didn't hunt that area probably had no idea that there were special regulations in place. So jumping into current, as Bill mentioned, we have had additional positives inside the state. In May, we received a call from a symptomatic white-tailed deer. It was staggering, showing ataxia, head droop stance. It was located in a field. As the farmer was doing his work, the deer would move out of the way of the tractor, and then on the next pass through, it would move 10 yards the opposite direction and stayed there for a number of days. We dispatched a team, got some assistance from local game warden, put the animal down, subsequently tested it. It came back as having CWD detected. And that was in Texas County in May of '23. So as according to the plan, we enacted our response team. The response team includes Wildlife Division crew. We work closely with our game warden crew in the field with boots on the ground, our local biologists, local technicians. We engaged Scott and his crew up in the Northwest. Also included ODAF. We made sure that the state veterinarian and his staff was involved because it is a joint response plan. So we engaged the response plan, or the response team. While we were discussing what our actions were going to be, lo and behold, in June, an additional deer pops up. In this case, it was located in Woodward County, about 15 miles east of Woodward. Again, we tweaked our response team a little bit, pulled in local biologists and local game wardens from that area, and started coming up with what we had envisioned as our response. So for Texas County response plan actions, basically it's a cookie cutter of what we did in Cimarron County. We created that SSA, or that surveillance zone, which you see here is the blue outline. Again, the deer in the crosshairs was our index case. The red area right below the index deer is Optima Refuge. The red over to the right side of this slide is Beaver River WMA, to kind of give you some context. So again, we created the SSA. Within that SSA, we're going to implement the movement restrictions that we implemented in Cimarron County, and we're also going to establish voluntary drop-off locations. These are where we're going to place basically a chest freezer with some collection bags and some information on how hunters can drop off their heads for voluntary testing. Due to the area there, we're going to probably establish one, possibly two, because it is a little bit higher deer density and a little bit higher hunter use area. Woodward County, again, we're going to follow the same plan that worked well for us in Cimarron County. The blue area here is the outside of the SSA. Again, the index case in the middle. When you look to the left, that's our Woodward office, our Wildlife Department office in Woodward. The black areas are former DMAP properties that we're going to utilize and lean on them for some additional testing, as they're going to be harvesting quite a few does. We're going to lean on those guys and see if they can't help us out with some deer heads. In the establishment of these SSA zones, we're wanting to use verifiable landmarks. We're wanting to use highways, county roads, something where a hunter understands where he's at on the map and not just an arbitrary, he has to look at a GPS. One thing to note here is, because our plan says we want to basically do the least amount of harm possible to manage deer through this disease, we specifically ensured that we were not going to impact one commercial breeding operation, a commercial hunting or a commercial deer breeding operation just outside of the town of Woodward there. So we're trying to do our best to work with our partners and not interrupt their business, but while still managing this disease and managing the problems it associates with it. So again, to wrap up our 2023 season response, a huge note of thank you to this commission for being forward-thinking in 2022. The way the rule was written and passed in 2022, it allows us to establish these SSAs through publication in our documents, rather than having to go back through an entire rulemaking proposal. Because the commission passed it in such a manner, it allows us as an agency to be nimble and to be able to act quickly. Finding out in June that we have a positive in Woodward, if we had to go all the way back through the entire rulemaking process, would put us a year behind. So again, thank you for the forward thinking on that. Our CWD response team, again, we've worked with ODAF, we've established our new SSAs, we're going to run those. The now permanent rule, again, makes our SSAs valid upon publication. The right side of the screen here is just what appeared in our regulation for that Cimarron County SSA and an explanation of the rules that accompanied it. And this will be repeated for both the Texas and Woodward County positives. And it's going to be too late this year for our printed regs, but it's going to go on our online regulations, and we're going to work with our C&E crew. Already talked about doing a pretty good push in social media and getting this information out there. So moving forward with the CWD plan, we're currently working with our partners over at ODAF to bring it up to date. It was adapted again in 2019. The science has advanced. At that point, there was really no live animal test. Currently, the USDA, the Federal Department of Agriculture, has allowed live animal testing in certain circumstances. So we will update our plan to allow that where it fits the federal guidelines. We're going to update. At the time we wrote the plan, there were 20 states that were impacted with CWD. There's now 30. There were 2 foreign countries, and I believe there are now 6. So we're moving forward. We've engaged industry, the captive cervid industry, that we've given them a seat at the table. They're taking a look at the plan and gonna get back with us where we can maybe make some alterations for those. That was pretty quick. I know it's been a long day. I appreciate the attention, and again, I appreciate the vote last year and the confidence that you give us to manage the deer, and I'd be happy to answer.
Jerry, did you find out any information on that field test developed by the University of Minnesota?
So the field test has not been approved by the USDA. The field test, it's a quick test. It has promise, but as you were discussing earlier with the feral hog bait, it has to go through a regulatory process, but it does have positive potential. So when it does, that will be a huge benefit to us being able to test and not have to wait on results. It's especially going to be helpful for our captive survey partners in that this live animal test, as it comes online, currently you have to kill an animal to get a valid sample. The new live animal test, they're able to take some mucosa from either the rectal lining or the esophageal lining, and they can get the same results that we're getting now. In the past, there was an issue with false positives with that test, and they've got those ironed out now, so they have been approved for captive use. But the science on this, there are people that make a career out of this in academia that are studying it, and absolutely, I appreciate that article, and when it comes online, because our plan is a living document, we will incorporate it as quickly as we can.
Jerry, I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
You briefed us on this before, but how's it transmitted between animal and animal?
So this is a disease that there are gaps in our knowledge. We do know that it is transmitted from nose-to-nose contact. We do know that it is transmitted through saliva uptake. It can be transmitted from plant uptake. This prion can actually be transported up into the growing portions of a plant from the ground and consumed, and it can be infectious at that area. Those are the main routes that we're concerned about. For our SSA carcass restrictions, we want to keep those prions in one area. Because it is a prion and not a virus, you can't kill it. It's not alive. It's a piece of tissue. That tissue can remain, or that prion can remain active in the soil for, they believe, decades. So we want to make sure with those SSA export closures that we keep that disease where we know it's already present. But as far as white-tailed deer, mule deer, and elk, it's generally nose-to-nose contact, eating together out of the same area, eating where you defecate. It can be transmitted through carrion birds. It can be transmitted through coyotes, through bobcats. That prion can pass through the system and end up just fine on the other side. So it's an issue.
Second, what is the remedy or penalty for violating the SSA prohibitions?
Yes, sir. It's a misdemeanor, just like all of our wildlife violations.
What is, in these areas where we have detected it, what would it take, or when would it be necessary to maybe restrict feeding, since it is passed that way? And number two, is there a mechanism, or is it necessary to where we could notify license holders in those areas so that they do know it's there and to be on the lookout for it?
And that is actually something, I'll take the second part of that question first. That's something that we've discussed with C&E. With our new license system, we have the ability to basically put a geofence around, and when people are entering an area, then we could hit them with a text message or an email. I don't know that we've pulled the trigger on that yet, but it has been discussed. Targeted marketing, basically for people that we know have checked in a deer from that area in the past, would be our first tier that we would target. License holders that have an address within that area would be people that we would target. Just so we can make sure that we're getting the word out to the right folks.
We will do that. That's in the
Yes, sir. We'll do everything we can, because that's in our plan, is to communicate as effectively as we can. So we're working on ways to best notify them. I don't want to speak for our colleagues, but those are all things that we have discussed as our response team, is how to get that information out. So I couldn't promise you exactly how, but those have been options that we've discussed, and I think they're pretty valid, and they seem to be something that we had the capability of doing. And I'm sorry, what was your first question again?
About feeding, since we know.
Yes, sir. Thank you. In our original plan, as it was passed, that is one of the deer management options that we have at our disposal. Right now, with deer densities in those areas, we don't feel that is the proper thing to do. Our deer hunting depends greatly in that area on adequate doe harvest. Feeding is an excellent way to get doe harvest. Again, we have this balancing act of how do we manage deer in the face of this disease. If we ban feeding, then do we lose hunters taking deer out? If deer hunters aren't actually shooting deer, deer populations grow exponentially. You get more of that nose-to-nose contact, you get them packed into a tighter area, and we could lose our ability to manage this disease. So items that are on the table down the road, but not being looked at now, are feeding bans, things like altering season length and season structure, perhaps increasing antlerless harvest, longer seasons, just ways that we can manage deer. And it's just the same deer management that we've done throughout the past. When we get an area that's overpopulated, we increase doe harvest. When we were concerned that we were shooting too many young deer, we did an educational campaign to let young deer grow. So it's the same deer management that we're quite familiar with, it's just being triggered by a different cause. So feeding is something that has been discussed. That's not a hill I'm wanting to climb and plant a flag on. It is such a portion of our hunting in Oklahoma that it would have to be a pretty drastic case. If you see me before the commission saying we need to stop feeding, we've got problems, big problems. Right now we don't have big problems. Other states have banned feeding. Other states don't have our history that we have. You run into things like, well, what's the difference between feeding deer and my mom's bird feeders in her backyard that deer will hit and eat the seed out of every day? It's just not, it's not a management tool that we're looking at to manage our deer herd in the face of CWD or without CWD.
How many, has Texas had any more in the Texas Panhandle?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I don't know what their latest numbers are. Dallas, I don't know, being off, he might.
They haven't had any in that particular area. Kind of the hot button up in Texas is going to be up around Dalhart. That's the very far northwest corner of the Panhandle. This has been kind of the case that was in Texas, just south of Boise City, was fairly east for them. So I haven't heard of anything additional in that particular area. But other than that, that's kind of where they're at.
So that deer was found as a result of surveillance area that they had put in place, because they had those over by Dalhart. It was a roadkill deer. And I didn't mention that. It's not anything that we passed in our regulations and rules, but we are working, and we did work with Cimarron County to talk to Highway Patrol and local sheriffs that if you come on a fresh deer kill, please call our game warden or a biologist so we can surveil that. We would like to get our hands on as many samples as possible without having to take additional deer. So our testing is going to be hunter harvested deer, DMAP properties, depredation deer, if we can get our hands on those. We are not, as an agency, going out and planning on shooting deer to test them for CWD. That's just not palatable to us. It's not palatable to our constituents. There might be a time when that is something that we need to do, and we've had to do that in the past in one area, just for testing. But again, that would be willing landowners, and it's always going to be voluntary first. If there's no way we can get the data voluntarily, then we'll look at other options, but that's not something that we want to do as an agency.
You work very well in Wisconsin.
No, sir. It costs some people some jobs. And bless their hearts, they didn't know. They did what they thought was best at the time. Fortunately for us, the science has moved on, and we're not the first state to deal with this. Our plan worked excellent in Cimarron County. It didn't seem to impact our hunters. It didn't seem to cause any problem. We are moving up a little bit in density. We are moving up a little bit on hunter use. So we're kind of stepping up a little bit, but I believe you gentlemen and lady passed an excellent plan. We're revising it, so we'll see where we go from here. But again, thank you for being forward thinking on this.
I think most people appreciate that there's not an overreaction, that it's a calm, scientifically based approach that we're looking at carefully before we make any steps. And so I think that's a big plus, the way y'all are handling this.
Thank you. That was deliberate.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very
Thank you.
Any more?
If I may, real quick, wrap us up. 26th state in the nation. So again, we've talked about this. It's out there. It's been out there. And I appreciate Jerry and Dallas. These guys go to these meetings and engage and learn, hear from these other states what didn't work, what's kind of working, you know. we don't have a real good, like Jerry said, we can't eradicate it now. I mean, it's here, but we'll manage for it, or manage around it, manage the deer herd around it. But the main thing you brought up feeding, I'm glad you did. C&E, we were talking about it. Main thing is we need our hunters to keep hunting. You know, we don't want people panicking. There's, you know, no detection that's been transmitted to humans, so no proof of it. But so C&E, we've been talking about this a little bit to keep the gas on. We just had a record harvest last year. Things were rolling along, and we want to keep them rolling. So anyway, thank y'all.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you, Jerry, also. All right. Is there any new business that was not foreseen? All right, well, thank you. Very good information and well-deserved awards, and thank you for being here, and meeting is adjourned.
Finance committee's got a You can have Red Bud jelly.
Fishing, hunting, wildlife management, resource protection, habitat conservation, public outreach,